All right, welcome everyone. I think we're ready to get started here. So thanks very much for joining us this morning. My name is Ed Bice and I work at Median, and I will be the moderator here. And in that role, I think my main goal is to give the brilliant panelists time to speak and give the audience the opportunity to ask questions. So do take this as conversational. I always give this prompt before panels, and rarely do people interrupt and ask questions, but you're welcome to. Raise your hand at any point. The topic today, I retitled the talk about 10 minutes ago because I thought it was clever to think about artificial intelligence and artificial news. The framing is thinking about how AIs can contribute to the task of improving content on the web, verifying content, and what challenges use of these AIs present. So I will introduce the panelists and then ask them to present their work. And again, any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate. So, appropriately enough, Martin Robbins from Factmata. Had a column at the Guardian called "Raising Hal." So the Space Odyssey theme resurfaces there. But Martin is currently working with the team at Factmata. A serious effort to apply AIs to the challenge of identifying misinformation on the web. And Martin's also a participant in the CREDCO. It's been a great contributing participant. I should have indicated at the outset that this panel was proposed by a Credibility Coalition. Median is a founding member of Credibility Coalition, so I'm very much here representing CREDCO. And two of our three panelists, perhaps by the end of the panel, three of our three panelists will be participants in CREDCO. Martin has background in AIs, natural language processing. Did a bachelor's in computer science and AI, and his mission is to fix the news. So, Amy Zhang is at MIT CSAIL and a core contributing member to CREDCO. And she's been a research assistant in the Haystack group at MIT, works on designing and building systems to improve discourse, collaboration, and understanding on the web. And has done a lot of fascinating research. She is a full stack developer, so knows her way around the codes. And her research is supported by Google PhD Fellowship and an NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. Lisa Maria Newdot from Oxford Internet Institute is an MPhil, or DPhil, sorry, candidate at the OII, and works as a researcher on the Computational Propaganda Project as a core member of the staff there. Her dissertation examines regulatory responses and technological and civil society countermeasures to digital disinformation. So she'll be bringing that perspective to the discussion today. So with that framing and with the credibility of the panelists established, we'll launch into their talks. So I will pass the controlling AI here over to Lisa Maria and invite her to give her presentation.
Thank you, Ed. Yes. And it works. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm glad you made it. I know 9:30 is quite early, especially if you have wine and pasta. I'm Lisa Maria Neudert. I am part of the Oxford Internet Institute, and I'm a researcher there at the Project on Computational Propaganda. And what we're doing there is we're looking at the propaganda in the digital age. There's a couple of things where we think that propaganda in the digital age is not like the propaganda we had before. And that is because propaganda now is automated, it is now data-driven, and it is also often user-generated and very easy to launch over social media. And with that, we're thinking propaganda is becoming more impactful and also much more targeted. And now we have an additional problem layer, which is we have artificial intelligence also coming to the task of propaganda and making it even more dangerous and potentially impactful. So with that, let's start talking about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence right now is a very binary topic. On the one hand, you have artificial intelligence as the solution, the big promised land. We hear reports about how artificial intelligence is helping us translate our content into every language that we want. We heard talks about great self-driving cars. I'm a big fan of that myself because I cannot drive, and especially not on the left side in England. So high hopes for that. But on the other hand, we also hear that artificial intelligence is a terrible problem that we're going to be faced with. The self-driving cars are going to kill our citizen. We are going to live in a science fiction-like dystopia where artificial intelligence is going to take over. Or also something that is maybe a little less extreme, where we're hearing that artificial intelligence is going to cost our economy a lot of jobs. So I think the solution, as so often it is somewhere in between. It's neither the solution, it's neither the problem, but instead it's a little bit of both. And before we start with the talk, I first want to look into the specific problem that we're trying to solve today. So the problem we're having is a wide viral spread of misinformation over social media. There is already a lot of research that is saying that misinformation spreads faster, it spreads wider, and it spreads deeper over social media than information is doing. And I picked this picture here because I think the spread of misinformation is often very much like an oil spillage. We have misinformation that is going to impact an entire information ecosystem. And that is going to make it a very hostile environment for information and also for any kind of actor really that is trying to navigate the misinformation space to navigate it. And I didn't only pick it because the colors were nice, but I also picked it because we can see one big boat that is having an impact on the entire ocean. And that is also often very much how propaganda is working. So you have organized big agents, such as, for example, Russian interference campaigns, that are still having an impact on the entire wider ecosystem. And so the question today is, is AI actually going to be helpful to get rid of that problem, to help us solve it? I first want to look into AI and propaganda. What is the status quo, and also what is the future? I think we are seeing AI in relation to the misinformation problem in 3 different areas right now. The first area is the area of content creation. So how is AI being used to create social media content? There's already a couple of very interesting examples. For example, the Washington Post has been using AI to write stories about the Olympics. And now we are kind of fearing our propaganda agents actually leveraging these same kind of technologies. The first idea is we have AI in the form of conversational agents, for example, automated bot accounts that are automatically disseminating messages over social media and are using AI for that. There is also something that is very scary, which is called deepfakes. And I actually brought you a video about deepfakes, which I hope is going to work, to show you how impactful artificial intelligence is already to make that kind of content. Let's see. Sadly, it did not work. I'll try to give you my best run through of this and do my best Obama impersonation. No, I will not. This video I brought is actually from researchers from the University of Washington, and they have been using 14 hours of material, video material from President Obama speaking, former president, sadly, and have used that to train in an AI to make a video of Obama that looks genuine. And what you see is a very convincing footage of him where he is talking in his own voice, where he is moving with his own demeanor, but they can basically get the AI to let him say anything that they want him to say. So you could, for example, former President Obama, have him say that he thinks the assault on Syria was a terrible idea, or you could have him say that it was a great idea. But of course, you can have many terrible creative things that you can do with that kind of footage. And this is called deepfakes. Deepfakes are also not just used for political campaigning, but one application area where we're seeing it right now is actually porn. And trying to do, on the one hand, celebrity porn, but also revenge porn, where you are doctoring your ex-girlfriend's picture on a porn video and leaking it to the internet. The second impact area of AI when it comes to misinformation is the targeting. So when we have content over social media, and especially when we have sponsored content, there is often an AI behind it in how to target that content. So you are selecting an audience for the content that you have. This is very data-driven. This is very much dependent on the kind of content that you have engaged with over social media, about whom you're friends with, about what your preferences are. And then you have AI that is put to the task to very intricately target individuals with messages that they think are going to be relevant or impactful for those individuals. And this is also not something that is imposed from the outside, but this is something that is very much integrated into systems. So for example, the Facebook advertising platform has tools like lookalike audiences that are very powerful. A lookalike audience is basically if you identify a smaller group of people that you think is specific, that are susceptible to a specific message, you can use that tool to scale it up. So you say, okay, I have a propaganda messages. I know that those 5 people have been susceptible to it, and I actually want to disseminate it to 500 people that are similar to those people. And that is possible with built-in tools in Facebook. The third component is the distribution of propaganda audiences. So this is then again, closely linked also to the targeting, but it is more a little bit about the algorithms that we are seeing. So whether it's Google, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, we have had experiences where algorithms have promoted misinformation. Google has resurfaced false information about the Las Vegas shooting. YouTube has a terrible problem with conspiracy theories, but also Twitter and Facebook repeatedly in their trending algorithms are promoting content that is simply false. And the problem is right now that we see algorithms that are often jumping on misinformation because AI is trained to be very human-like and to respond to what humans would find interesting. And the problem is what they would find interesting is often things that are sensationalist and often things that are somewhat surprising. So we have an algorithmic amplification of the misinformation problem. And we have an additional problem layer, which is this is right now where the money is going. We have our Amazon Alexas, we have our Siris, we have our Googles, and this is also exactly very much where the money is going, where people are trying to put AI to the task to become conversational, to become really smart, to become really human-like. And the problem is that those kind of technologies are often developed without anyone thinking about ethical and social implications. But once a technology is out of the box, you cannot put it back into it. And so if you're thinking about Amazon Alexa and the great stuff that she can do and how smart she is, and if you're then thinking like, okay, wow, maybe that technology could also be used by a propagandist to have a bot spread viral misinformation, I think then you start to question, is this a technology that we actually want that readily available, or should we think about how we as a society want to handle it? So what are the application areas of misinformation for AI? I borrowed this typology by a colleague from Reuters, Lucas Gravis, who basically says for AI and misinformation, and especially also related to fact-checking, there are 3 areas. The first area is identifying misinformation. So can we have systems that are looking into large amounts of data and that are telling us, like, we think this piece of information here is actually a misinformation, and we should debunk it or highlight it. When you're thinking about how skilled AI is with that, think about, for example, a post of your friend on Facebook where you're thinking like, is he serious? Is this actually irony, or is this something that is very genuine? And the same problem AI is having too. So the problem with identification is it is highly contextual, and it is very, very sensitive to meaning and often also to human interpretation. So this is still a very big task for AI. The other big tasks are verification of content. So you have a piece of content, misinformation, information. Can we put AI to the task to see if this claim that, for example, a politician made on a live TV show, is this claim actually truthful or is it not? And then on the next level, you then also would have the correction. So say the politician made a false claim, can we also have an AI potentially in real time correct the claim? But in order to do all that, first of all, you have big problems with the context of data, and you also need structured databases. So it is not as easy as like we can match a claim with a piece of debunking information, but you actually need very detailed databases, and I know that Martin is going to talk about that some more, to train your AI to be able to perform all those tasks. With that, we've already come to my last slide, which is, I think right now, when we're talking about AI, we are experiencing something that I would call tech solutionism. Especially when we're talking about misinformation, there is a notion that AI is going to be able to solve this, that we know how to take care of this problem, we just need AI. And the narrative is also often, like, we could already get it right, but we just don't have the training data. We don't have the wealth of training data because social networks aren't sharing. We don't have the structured training data because it actually takes a lot of time to structure data. But I just want to put out a warning that even if we get our training data right, that still does not mean that we train our AI the right way. We still have questions about bias in training data. We still have questions about context. we have questions also about scale. So for example, if your AI is performing well at a smaller scale with a smaller training data set, does not necessarily mean if you scale that training data set up, it is going to do the same thing. And this is a very practical problem, but also one that many media outlets and journalists are not thinking about when we're reading about it. And also, we have a talent problem, because the best people that are doing this are often scooped up by Facebook and by Google. I'm glad that some of them aren't. But it is a very deep challenge for this. And so with that, my last word is be wary of tech solutionism with AI. AI is certainly going to be able to be put to the task to fight against misinformation, but it's not going to be as simple as 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Lisa Maria. Cautionary notes at the end. So, to solutions now. Amy Zhang, as I mentioned, has been a core contributor to Credibility Coalition, and she's going to tell you more about what we're doing with that initiative. Amy.
Is my microphone working? Okay. Hi, everyone. So as Ed mentioned, I'm Amy. So I have a couple different hats. I'm a PhD student at MIT CSAIL, where I do human-computer interaction work, so building and designing systems to improve how we have discussions online. As mentioned, I'm also a member of Credibility Coalition, which I'm going to be talking to you all about today. And then finally, I'm part of a group called Assembly at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard and the Media Lab that's focusing on the ethics and governance of AI. So yeah, the Credibility Coalition. So what does this mean, and why is this a potential solution or part of a solution around misinformation? I think one of the biggest hurdles that the Credibility Coalition is trying to address is basically, how do we get everyone who's working in this space of AI and non-AI approaches to solving misinformation on the same page? How do we get people and systems talking to each other? And so a little bit about the background of Credibility Coalition. It started at MisinfoCon, which some of you may have heard about or been to, which was first started last year between hackers, and what we saw there was there were all these different projects, and it's a conference focused on coming up with solutions to the misinformation problem. So there are all these different projects, some around AI for detecting misinformation, crowd annotation for marking things that are misinformation, or media literacy initiatives, tools for users to be able to see things that are potentially misinformation. So one of the things we thought about was, wouldn't it be great if all these different systems could talk to each other? And not just like in the conference physically talking to each other, but wouldn't it be great if all their systems could talk to each other? So the data coming in from this crowd annotation platform could also surface on this person's reader platform, or AI could be learning things that the people were annotating, and so on and so forth. So from that initial idea, formed this idea of coming up with indicators or standards around what is credible content. And it started out as the Credibility Indicators Working Group, kind of a long name, later become Credibility Coalition. And it was people, it was a group of people, started from MisinfoCon. It was people from platforms, web standards, academia, journalism, fact-checking, startups such as Factmana, and there were working groups in places like San Francisco and New York City, and there will be upcoming ones as well. And it was getting together, putting together a lot of Post-it notes, a lot of brainstorming around when you see an article, what actually is it that signals credibility, and coming up with what are these things. Since then, we've had weekly group calls, and it's grown. It's this large group now, and it's open for participation. If any of you are interested, please let us know. And basically, the central question that we are trying to get a handle on is, can we agree on scientific and systematic ways to assess the credibility of information and whether they can be applied at scale. So I think there's kind of like three important parts to that question. So one is agree. So this is a collective effort, and how can we get everyone on board and come to an agreement about this? Because if it's something where it's like we come up with something and then everyone just kind of doesn't feel like this is right, then that means that the group has failed. So definitely thinking about how to get buy-in and interest and participation from many diverse groups. Also scientific and systematic. So can we do this in a rigorous way? Can we collect data? Can we analyze the signals that we've created? Can we say something about them that's interesting and useful and helpful to researchers, to platforms, and to the public? And then the last is scale. So how can we actually use this to help with the misinformation problem? So can we use this to leverage the power of people, of the data that we collect, the data that's available out there, and potentially AI? So a little bit more about who we are. So, we are an interdisciplinary community committed to improving our information ecosystems and media literacy through transparent and collaborative exploration. So another aspect that's important about this group is the diversity of experiences on there. So I already mentioned there are people from all different groups there. It's important to have people with different expertise coming together. So academics are analyzing the data. We have journalists who are, and media literacy experts who are talking about the indicators, fact checkers who are talking about their process and how they actually do annotation. And they're all coming together to think about how to use these indicators and how to study them. Another thing that's been really important is, and the reason why we've taken this approach is this idea of transparency. So first, transparency around the process itself. So how we go about defining indicators, how those actually could play into a credibility score that shows up on a site, for instance, a search engine or a news feed. So just having these indicators themselves, I think, is an aspect of that transparency. So being able to say, from the score, it's coming from these various different indicators. And then also, we're very interested in thinking about how this can help with media literacy. So instead of like what some people would call like a seamless experience, I like to think of it as a seam-full experience. So how can we expose some of the processes that goes into how various systems are defining credibility in order to allow readers and the public to make informed decisions about what they read? The transparent and collaborative exploration that I mentioned, it involved having these working groups, going to various conferences. So we went to Mozilla Fest, we've been to the W3C, where they do a lot of this web standards work, and just going to various places to try and bring people to the table. And so then I want to talk a little bit about the core goals of the group. So we have three main goals. The first is to identify these indicators, credibility indicators, and their potential use cases. So answering questions like, what kind of signals actually makes a piece of content credible? So that's kind of like one of our main goals. But also, how might these signals actually be surfaced to people or used by tools that people use to find or share or read content? So this could be maybe search engines or browsers or things like social media. These two things are not in sync, so it's hard to organize. The second goal is how can we establish cooperation and can we build this working process and this data model that others can then use and build off of? So now that we've developed some indicators, how can we actually get buy-in around these indicators? How do we solicit feedback from communities and from the public, and then also share the results that we have and the data that we collect with them? And then also, how can we be transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. And then the last goal is, can we actually collect some data and generate some new scientific results to share with others? So how can we add to the scientific knowledge that is out there around these different credibility indicators? And actually, there's not a ton, so we're really excited to bring some of this data and this research forward. So some questions such as, for instance, does a particular indicator actually align with credibility? Like, maybe we think it does, but when we go out and annotate it, and then we ask actual domain experts whether something is credible, does it actually match up, or maybe today it doesn't anymore, or maybe over time it once was a good indicator of credibility, but now it no longer is. Another question is, could something be too subjective for people to agree on? So we might say that, you know, this particular thing, maybe it's the way a person is writing or talking about a particular topic. Maybe one person thinks it sounds a certain way and someone else thinks it sounds another way, and actually it's hard to get people to agree on this. So that's an issue if we're thinking about collecting data or annotating this type of content. And then another question is, can we actually generate enough data and generate good quality data to see if machines could actually take a role in this? So for instance, if we can collect enough data on how clickbait a title is, for instance, in an article, is that something that machines can detect nowadays using standard machine learning techniques? If so, then can we use that to then scale up this type of indicator analysis? Yeah, so from those goals, we first started out with kind of like a small pilot to test our ideas, to test our process, and after this, we're planning to scale up, but just want to talk a little bit about the pilot that we did. So the pilot basically was looking at this process that we have identified. So taking something that is an article that was published somewhere. So we're starting with articles, although in the future we're thinking about things like images and memes and videos, etc. So you take something like an article, and then we put it through our process. We say, all right, let's get some annotators. Let's annotate this article with the various different credibility indicators that we've been researching and working on. Then can we take those annotations, clean them up, do some analysis, and then give them to the public, to researchers, to platforms, to be able to take that information and then do things with it, such as come up with a credibility score, annotate a piece of content on the web, or show various things in an interface. So we went and tested this out. We wanted to take some articles and just put them through this process to see how that annotation workflow would look like. Just for this first pilot, we did 50 articles, 9 annotators, 16 different indicators. We focused, just for the pilot, on the topic of public health and climate change. So 2 kind of hot button areas that have a lot of misinformation, legitimate information kind of swirling around. And we looked at the top 50 most shared articles of last year related to those 2 topics. We picked annotators that were diverse politically. They had backgrounds in or training in journalism or logic and reasoning. So trying to find people that could provide these high quality annotations. So here's an example of an article in our first pilot. This was actually the most shared article in the topic of public health in 2017. It got shared over 1.9 million times. So to give you a sense of the scale, from a source called Earth We Are One. John Hopkins researcher released a shocking report on flu vaccines. So here is a list of the indicators that we looked at for this particular pilot. So we split them into 2 different categories. First, content, which is what can you learn from an article just by reading it, basically. So information about the title, information about the things that are quoted in the article, what is it citing, what is the tone of the article, how is the author writing it, are they qualifying their statements or speaking with a lot of confidence? Is there a lot of emotion being used? Are they making any sort of logical fallacies while they're speaking, making like leading statements, etc.? And then we have a second category of indicators, which is focused on context. So these are things that are adjacent to or outside of the article itself. So maybe this is something that a fact checker would do. For instance, go check to see whether this is an original piece of content or it's been reposted or somehow reworked from another site. Has it been fact checked by an approved fact checker? Are the citations actually representative? So if you go out and find the original source at something that an article is citing, is it actually representing that piece of content properly? What is the reputation of any citations? So for this, we were looking at like citations to academic articles and the impact factor of where they were published. Also information about ads, which is very related to sort of the monetization of content. So are there ads on the page? Where are the ads on the page? How many ads are on the page, etc. So we took that and we we used a couple different annotation platforms. One is a tool out of Berkeley's data science group, and this tool is called Text Thresher, so it allows annotators to go through this annotation workflow without seeing text in the context of the actual source, as we found in earlier pilots that people are very influenced by the source of a piece of content. So if you scrub that away and you can just see what's in the article, what are annotators actually annotating? We also use the tool Check, which is by Medan, and for this, annotators were doing the context-related indicators, so going out and finding information about the article, about things cited in the article, and then annotating it in Check. So some of our preliminary findings. So we found, so I'll mention we also went out to ask domain experts on these particular topics to annotate the credibility of the 50 articles, and we tried to connect the credibility score, the credibility indicators that annotators were annotating to that domain expert content. So one of the things we found was that some indicators do actually correlate with credibility. So things like representativeness of citations, the results of a fact check, the clickbaitness of the title, exaggerated or emotionally charged tone in the article. These were all things that correlated quite strongly with domain expert and assessments of credibility. Another interesting finding that we had was that the actual quantity of ads and content recommendations and sponsored content on the page of the article doesn't actually reliably distinguish credible and non-credible content. So it turns out that there are credible sources out there that are also putting ads on their page, and so now this is kind of no longer a thing that is really correlating with credibility, as we saw in our pilot. Conversely, however, it turns out it wasn't so much the quantity of ads, it was the placement of ads. And we saw that when we were asking annotators, is the placement of the advertising on this page aggressive? This was actually a strong indicator of credibility. So things like, are the ads like moving around on the page or on top of the content itself, for instance, and you had to click away from it. This was actually more correlated to credibility than the quantity. And then one other interesting thing we found, we asked annotators both before they did their annotation and after to rate the credibility of a piece of content. And one interesting thing we saw was that after they did their annotation, they were closer to domain experts than before. So we think this is kind of an interesting finding for media literacy and thinking about the knowledge of these indicators and having that knowledge in a reader's head, how that can help them better interpret that content. So we are presenting some of this work actually in 2 weeks in Lyon at the web conference. I think several people in the Credibly Coalition will be there. So just kind of like a recap of the goal of Credibility Coalition. So instead of us coming up with this, opaque, uninterpretable single score affecting all these articles, we're saying, no, actually, we want to bring people together using this transparent and open process to define indicators that then can go and add structure to content, inform content, and our goal is to then use that to then produce high quality data for others to analyze and incorporate into their platform. So some of the things that are kind of coming down the pipeline for Credibility Coalition, we did this pilot. We found some interesting things. We are kind of reworking our process, our workflow based off of what we did, and thinking about how to scale up a little further. So doing more articles, having more annotators, thinking about the actual potential use cases themselves. So I have a couple examples of that. For instance, you could see this kind of information surfacing on a search engine. So in your search results, if you search for something, maybe instead of just seeing the piece of content, you can see the piece of content and some annotations on there. There's an example of where this is actually working today is something called, so fact-checking is now has sort of like a schema associated with it so that machines can read it. So things like Google search results can actually pull up the results of a fact check straight in the search results. You could also see this working somewhere like Facebook, so they've been playing around with this as well, surfacing results of a fact check in the feed itself. So could you imagine doing this for other kinds of indicators, perhaps? And then, so I just want to really quickly just mention some like potential interesting things to talk about with our panel here today. So if you'll notice, I didn't actually, in talking about the things that we're doing, I didn't actually talk about models, like AI models yet. And part of what we're saying here is that this is what it takes to build responsible AI, right? So thinking about things like fairness, accountability, and transparency, oftentimes what you need is you do need this collaborative, open, expert-driven process to think about data and think about the ways that you are feeding into a model before just going out there and building that model. So we're trying to think of a way to actually do this process in a way that others can perhaps learn from it. And then another thing that, just putting it out there, we could maybe discuss is, so now we do have AI models for predicting misinformation. So now what? What is the governance of these models and of these systems? So is there a role for end users, for platforms? What are the different roles that people could play? Where does something like Credibility Coalition, where does that live in this? And then the last thing I want to quickly mention is kind of going back to this topic of like AI solutionism, thinking about how we talk about AI and not getting sucked into sort of like the misinformation and the hype around AI itself. So AI, it's not this magic wand. It's a lot of work to build the data, to build the models, think about the features. Today, even the most sophisticated AI systems out there still don't know a ton about language and context. So, they can't read. So, so thinking about how we can be more rigorous in the way we talk about AI and thinking about things like, for instance, the AI index, I think, is a really interesting case of a system out there that's trying to provide this curated, unbiased set of metrics around AI progress and updates. Thinking about ways we can try to center people in the conversation and communities in the conversation as opposed to the technology or AI itself. And with that, I'll just end with, these are the annotation platforms we've been working with. Check from Medan, public editor, from Berkeley and Hypothesis. And finally, our partners. Thank you to our partners. And our funders. Thank you to our funders. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Amy. A credible representative of the Credibility Coalition. So thanks for those words. Okay, I am now going to pass it over to Martin and suggest that he speak over one slide. No. Okay, it didn't populate across, but Martin, you've got the stage.
Fantastic. Have I got a microphone? Ah, there we go. Fantastic. Thanks. Sorry, this technology is beyond me. So, yeah, I mean, going back to Amy's kind of last point there about, Christ, I've just forgotten what your last point was now, the second to last thing you said.
Magic wand.
Oh, the magic wand, yeah. So I just sort of wanted to start kind of before I get on to my bit about kind of artificial intelligence and how kind of journalists talk about it and how we talk about it. I don't think it's a particularly useful term in this kind of context. A lot of the time we sort of use these kind of vague, kind of abstract things like artificial intelligence, but we actually mean a specific thing. In the case of a lot of what we're doing, we're talking about classifiers, for example, and calling a classifier like an artificial intelligence, it's a bit like calling a hammer like a magic iron wand or something. It doesn't really sort of help explain what we're doing or what some of the challenges are. Coming back to kind of fat matter, what we're trying to do fundamentally is tackle these problems at scale. And at scale, we're talking about advertising platforms that are dealing with potentially billions of URLs per day. And so if we look at this kind of problem, like we need expertise to do that, but it's far, far too big to do manually. And you know, the fundamental problem is how do we get that kind of expert-generated data? Sorry, I'm feeling quite unwell.
Would you like us to pass a question around, Martin, and then maybe come back?
No, sorry, I had something quite bad to eat yesterday, and it's affecting me a little bit. Let me just have a bit of water. So the fundamental problem is that we need to be able to capture expertise from people to be able to kind of train our systems. But the current efforts to do that don't really cut it in terms of the data that we're able to produce. Sorry. I apologize, sorry, yeah, feeling slightly unwell. Wow, fantastic start, sorry. So yeah, apologize. No, I'm okay, I just need a little, a moment just to kind of compose myself, sorry.
Break or start with a discussion and come back as you like.
Yeah.
That's fine. Do you know what? I'm absolutely fine. I'm going to carry on. It's good. I apologize. Sorry, just had a bit of a moment there. No, it's all right. I'm just going to sit here and continue talking for a bit. So yeah, apologies for that. So we need a way to kind of capture expertise in order to train those kind of platforms as we were talking about. I also sort of want to start by saying that I don't believe that artificial intelligence is a kind of magic bullet for this solution or something that can solve this problem on its own. One of the reasons I ended up getting involved in Fat Matter is because I wrote an article last year where I said that I didn't actually believe that AI could solve the problem of fake news. And that resulted in the kind of CEO getting in touch with me and ultimately through a long and improbable chain of circumstances getting a job with them. So I'm kind of in a position now sort of slightly trying to disprove what I said before, but I still stand by it in the sense that, you know, this isn't a purely technical problem, and it's not something that you can just sort of solve, you know, just by throwing large amounts of data and sort of magic black boxes at it. Having said that, data is kind of a really big problem here, and we do need better data than we have at the moment. And if you sort of look around the environment that we're in at the moment, there's kind of two different sort of ends of the spectrum in terms of the data that's available. So at the first end, you've got the sort of more kind of academic side, which is roughly where I'd position what we're doing with Credibility Coalition. And we also have things like sort of fact-checking organizations like Full Facts, who are compiling annotation data effectively on URLs that we're finding on the internet. In the case of those efforts, though, as kind of detailed as they are, they're pretty small. So if you look at what Full Facts are doing, which is incredible in their domain, they're taking maybe 90 volunteers and they're able to produce something like 25,000 annotated URLs. And that's a really nice start, and it's a really nice sort of high quality set of data. And for their purposes, that's absolutely fine. They're fact-checking in a sort of limited, specific domain. But if we want to train algorithms that are going to be dealing with 7-8 billion URLs a day, then that sort of quantity of data doesn't particularly cut it. What we need is more like millions of annotated URLs. And this isn't also just something that you can do once and train an AI and kind of walk away. One of the points that I don't think people necessarily appreciate about fake news is how innovative it is. Like fundamentally, it's a bit like sort of porn in the 90s in the sense that you've got this incredible explosion of innovation in how to actually mislead people online. And these sites are evolving and becoming very, very sophisticated, and in a lot of cases actually looking more sophisticated than other sort of professional real sites that are out there. And so then you sort of come to the other end of the spectrum, which is the big tech platforms. And there's this really kind of frustrating attitude when it comes to people like sort of Facebook, Google, Twitter, and so on, where people kind of act as if they're sort of omniscient gods who have kind of all the data that you could possibly imagine and can do pretty much anything with it. And so one of the things we often kind of get asked is this question of like, well, what's the point, like a smaller startup tackling something like fake news, when Facebook could just throw $1 billion at the problem and hire a bunch of kind of AI people and sort of solve it overnight. And what's interesting is that they haven't, and that if you sort of look at what they're doing at the moment, there isn't really any major indication that they're about to. So one of the problems with these sorts of big platforms is that they're fundamentally designed from the ground up to deal with issues around sort of engagement and what people like. There's not really anything in the kind of basic design of Facebook or Twitter that deals with quality in any meaningful way. It's all, what do you like, what do you read, what do you engage with, what do you comment on, those sorts of questions. Sorry, just check my notes there. And yeah, so that doesn't sort of measure quality in any kind of meaningful way. And if you look at what they're doing at the moment, so 2018 is supposed to be the year that Facebook sort of finally gets to grips with fake news and kind of deals with the problem. But the initiative they have at the moment, if you kind of talk to anyone from that organization about, what's your kind of mission this year, they've kind of defaulted back to this idea of kind of meaningful social interactions. Now, pretty much every time you speak to someone at Facebook at the moment, they will come up with that phrase. I would be very interested how many people in the room right now could put their hand up and tell me what Facebook mean by meaningful social interactions. There we go. Fantastic. That's, to be honest, not quite what they said, but yeah, that's probably an interesting way of putting it. It's actually quite tricky. I was in a session with them the other day, and we didn't really sort of get to a fantastic answer on it. The first kind of response I heard was like better conversations, which just seems to be like a slightly different way of saying the same thing. But then when you sort of break it down, what it comes down to is peer-to-peer conversation on content. And basically saying like we want to prioritize content where people are going to be more likely to have conversations about it with their friends, because that's what makes our users happier, and it kind of results in more eyeballs, that kind of thing. There's nothing really baked into that about quality at all, or really about sort of quality journalism or anything like that. So it's not really massively clear how a platform that's purely focused on those kinds of engagement metrics is going to solve this problem. So one of the things we were looking at over the last few months at Fact Matter is like, how do we actually generate that kind of data? And we were playing around with sort of lots of ways of sort of annotating news content and getting people to annotate news content. We used various sort of third-party kind of groups and people that sort of specialize in crowdsourcing. and pretty inevitably found that the quality of the annotation data that we were getting wasn't really good enough. And so I was sort of brought into the company to look into this problem. And one of the first things that kind of occurred to me is that actually the question isn't so much, where do we get this data, it's who do we get this data from? And it turns out that there are groups of people who specialize in sort of investigating content and investigating the world around them and reporting that back in sort of useful, structured ways. They're called journalists and domain experts and other sort of groups of people with kind of expert knowledge in those fields. And it also turned out at the same time as we were doing kind of user research with these groups that a lot of them are very unhappy, to say the least, with some of the platforms that they're using at the moment. In terms of sort of sharing and curating content. A lot of people are having a very bad experience on these platforms, whether it's kind of abuse on Twitter or just the way that journalism is treating publishers at the moment. So we've been working over the last few months on building out that platform. We're hoping to go into beta in the next month or so. But that's kind of raised a whole bunch of other problems for us as well. We're at a point now where we're pretty confident that we can get a decent number of people on a platform annotating content by providing them with a useful product. But at the same time, that then raises all the other issues we talked about in terms of sort of annotator bias and the kind of people that we bring in. Because if we focus on journalists, if we focus on domain experts, then we're effectively importing all of the kind of biases and issues that exist in those professions at the moment around kind of gender representation, ethnicity, age profiles, pretty much any sort of existing bias you can think of. And to be honest, that's not a problem I think that we can immediately solve. But one way that we can tackle it is to move away from this idea of like content online being rated by popularity and moving it over to metrics like credibility. Because once you disconnect the value of a piece of content from the number of people that are following it or sharing it, then you've got a more abstract number that you can actually start to sort of manipulate, tweak, check for bias, and then alter in some kind of way. So that's what we're kind of working on over the next few months. If you're interested in signing up to a beta, sorry, it's always annoying when the name of your product sounds like beta. If you're interested in signing up to a beta of Briefer, you can do so at briefer.cc. Just get a little plug in there at the end, and I'll shut up so that we can get on to the discussion bit. And apologies for the weird bit at the beginning.
All right. Yeah, please. That was a real hook at the beginning there from the journalist on the panel. Had us all on the edge of our seats. But fantastic work, fantastic product. I've got some questions for the panel, but I would love to invite anyone in the audience who's got a question to offer it up with a show of hands. Great. Okay.
Thank you. With the popularity versus credibility sort of approach. And I was really interested in one of the blue slides that Amy had, saying that you're looking to an agreed scientific and systematic way to assess the credibility of information. And from the scientific area, in particular regulatory science, we got in place all this criteria that you're trying to develop for information, such as reproducibility, good laboratory practices, expert knowledge elicitation, weight of evidence, peer review. And still, that doesn't stop the human factor and the emotions. So you spend 3 years looking at the critical mass of evidence, and then one study from Saragossa University says that coffee causes cancer, and that gets really spread and it becomes very popular. So I would suggest and ask if you're working with scientists to look at the strengths and the weaknesses of this very technical approach versus the emotional side.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thanks. That's a really good point. I think we are working with scientists, and we want to be rigorous in how we understand the indicators that we're working with. So in terms of collecting data and then analyzing that data, releasing it, letting others analyze that data as well, and in terms of being able to say with some confidence various things about different indicators. So how well they align with credibility, how well annotators agree on these types of indicators. I think the question about emotion is very interesting as well. I think one of the things we want to do, because some of the indicators that we have are related to the emotion in the article. So for instance, exaggerated tone, high emotional valence, confidence also. So like how confidently are you talking about something versus hedging more. So I think just having those is very interesting, because if this was something that was actually surfaced to readers, I think it could be really useful to trigger in a reader's mind these kinds of psychological tricks that articles can often play. So if you're aware of, oh, like here's an annotation of logical fallacy, or actually this is a clickbait title, maybe this is something that when a user sees it, they can realize that this is happening, and then be able to think more carefully about some of the other aspects of the article that are more related to scientific fact, perhaps. So that's kind of the media literacy angle that we want to take with this. So actually trying to surface these latent characteristics within an article for readers so that they can be aware of these kinds of psychological tricks. I think there is also a role in platforms as well. So we can do these things, but it's important that platforms also take a part in this. So Martin's point about engagement metrics and how platforms are surfacing content based off of engagement metrics is obviously an issue. So if we can have this other type of information that is talking about things like citations, representation of outside sources, the credibility of that, we can start to shift away from that conversation of just engagement. I think we can all agree now that these metrics of like trending content is no longer useful, because they're so easy to game. I think there's a role for annotation to play, for experts to play in that. I think there's actually also a role for users and users themselves. In many cases on these platforms, I mean, what do you expect to happen when you only ask people to annotate, quote unquote, whether something is interesting or not? Basically, that's the only way you let people tell how they're responding to a piece of content. You can upvote it, you can like it, you can comment on it, and these are just kind of metrics related to engagement. So can users play a role in this process of annotation for things other than engagement? I think could be really interesting.
Another question, maybe, since we need to stop in 5 minutes. So I apologize for the quick stop.
Shane Greenup, I'm independent, working on the Socratic web. What is sort of the objective of? So let's say you develop this credibility engine rating thing, and you are able to designate content that is credible versus not credible. How exactly does that differ from organizations and entities that we've had, in some cases for hundreds of years, that are the epitome of credibility? Like the Royal Society, the National Academy of Sciences, Nature, Science Magazine, journalistic companies that have been around forever, that have spent hundreds of years establishing credibility and developed things like the theory of evolution is factual, but we have young Earth creationists that just go, don't care. Climate change is real, don't care. We have credibility available in society, and the problem of fake news and misinformation is that people don't care because it doesn't go with their narrative. So is finding another method of establishing credibility, how is that going to help overcome that fundamental problem?
I would like to take this if I may, because it's also something that I think a lot about. I think that goes back to very much the relationship about credibility and emotion again. Credibility markers are not made for people that look at the New York Times and already think like, oh, this is a credible source of news. But it is also not made for the people that are looking at the New York Times and are saying like, this is a form of the establishment, and I will not trust it because it is exactly everything that I dislike. It is political elites, it is journalistic elites, and I do not want to believe this. I want to get my information by a conspiracy site, and something that by all means does not look credible, and that people also are trained to some extent to know that this does not look credible simply because it is a different and alternative society. It's an alternative media system, and this is also what's very successful right now. But on the other hand, I do think there are a lot of people, and especially also older people, who might not be quite as information literate when they are browsing the web. Also, when we're thinking about, for example, in India, there are many, many people that are going to go on the internet for the first time, millions of people, before the next elections that they're going to hold, and they're literally going to see the internet for the very first time and will not have any idea what to look out for, what is trustworthy, what is credible, and what is not. So I do think there is a wide scale and also wide need for credibility, transparency, and markers to make that user accessible. But I also think it's not going to be the one solution, because the problems that we're having are very much at a societal level.
Also, I mean, institutions worked, right, in the offline world, but we haven't really sort of successfully replicated that model online. Instead, those same organizations have kind of ceded control of the internet information to a bunch of companies who don't really put quality at the front of what they do. So, you know, in some respects, if you can start to replicate, you know, what the Royal Institution did, what other kind of institutions did online, then that's sort of quite an interesting model to follow. Instead, we've got this kind of very intensely emotionally driven set of platforms. And Twitter, like going sort of back to the previous point, it's remarkable how Twitter kind of plays on emotion, not just in terms of, you know, engagement metrics or so on, but in the fundamentals of how that product is designed. Every single thing about it is designed to sort of speed up reaction, to condense reaction, to sort of, you know, boil this whole sort of thing down into sort of very sort of emotional kind of nuggets of information coming in. So if people can start sort of providing alternatives to that, you know, based around more credible information, then that seems like a good way forward.
Yeah, I would just add a last point, that if we have in place indicators, then it's not about censorship. It's about making sure that if a number of indicators have been triggered, then we're not algorithmically boosting that content. And secondly, that we may serve a context layer. The platforms may be incentivized to serve a context layer on top of a piece of heavily disputed content. The mechanics of how this actually exposes to the end user, and how it interacts with the AIs that the platforms are using to promote and to monopolize attention, it will evolve undoubtedly, but you know, having the data, machine and human generated, is a first step. So we do have to end this panel 5 minutes early because I am on back-to-back panels. So I want to thank the panelists for their time and the audience for your attendance. And I'm certain that this panel will be relevant next year. So hopefully we're back again. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Sorry.
I think you just press. Yeah.
Great. I guess we should get. All right, we'll get started. I'm Bill Adair. I am the Knight Professor for Journalism and Public Policy at Duke University. I'm also the creator of PolitiFact, the fact-checking website in the United States. And I want to welcome you to our discussion today. This was something that Alexios and I talked about and proposed to Chris because I think both of us working in the fact-checking community have seen such an explosion of interest in fake news, and I had a concern about it, that it has become overblown, and so we started with the title for the panel and went from there. And so happy you could join us today for this discussion. I'm going to start by introducing our panel, and each of us will talk for about 7 minutes, sort of give our perspective on things. I will then ask some questions of other members of the panel. We'll talk a little bit and then invite you to join us in this conversation. And we expect the conversation to go beyond just answering that question, is fake news overblown, and to get into some of the larger issues of trust, of the role of journalists in challenging accuracy even within other news organizations, and then talk about sort of where this is going next. We've spent, particularly in the United States, the past year with a lot of focus on fake news, and there is tremendous interest by foundations and other funders in conducting research about it, in funding ways to combat it, and all of this has had, I think, in many ways, some positive effects in journalism. But I also worry that our priorities are getting a little skewed. So, but first, let me start by introducing our panel. So, on my left, on your right, is Polly Curtis. Polly is the editor-in-chief of Huffington Post UK. Before that, you may know her from The Guardian, where she worked for 15 years as a reporter and editor, and was the creator of The Guardian's first live fact-checking blog. On my right, on your left, is Phoebe Arnold. Phoebe is the head of communications and impact at Full Fact. Full Fact is a fact checker in the UK, a real pioneer in a lot of ways. We've been working with them lately, joining in the effort to automate fact checking, and so fortunate to have Phoebe here. And on my far right is Alexios Mantzarlos. Alexios is the director of the International Fact-Checking Network at Poynter. The IFCN is the global association of fact-checkers that we started about 5 years ago. And Alexios, before that, was one of the founders of Pagella Politica here in Italy, a great fact-checker and a real leader in the global fact-checking movement. So thank you. So I'll kick off with just a few thoughts and why I wanted to have this discussion. I think we need to begin and see if we all agree on the definitions here. The term fake news has come to mean many things to many different people. And I think when we talk about it, we are typically referring to false news articles, often produced for profit by, I would say, kind of shady entrepreneurs, people who are trying to either make money from it or create misinformation. Are we in agreement on that definition?
In the purest sense.
Yeah. Now, of course, it's come to mean a lot of other things to different people in the United States. Donald Trump often refers to news organizations that he doesn't like as fake news. He will refer to individual stories as fake news. One of my students, Riley Griffin, did an analysis of this in the first 6 months of the Trump presidency and found that when Trump said fake news, that he was usually referring to stories about Russia and Russia's involvement in the U.S. elections. And a more recent study, and Alexis, you may remember the specifics, talked about how many people believe that fake news is an accurate term to use to describe journalism they don't like, that they disagree with, so it really has come to mean a lot of different things to different people. So to pivot to our point here, I want to stipulate at the beginning that I think that fake news is a problem, and in the United States we saw many news articles during the 2016 election, and it's probably wrong to call them news articles, that spread false things. No, Donald Trump was not endorsed by the Pope. There was, false news spread much more on social media, particularly on Facebook, and the studies show that people on Facebook are much more likely to share false news than accurate news stories. So, I want to stipulate from the beginning that it is a problem. My concern is that as someone working in the fact-checking community, I'm concerned that this has gotten our priorities out of whack. And I think that there has been so much attention on fake news that it misses that the serious problem was and remains politicians who lie and distort and deceive. That is a far greater problem today, just like it was a big problem years ago before we saw this growth of false news. And what concerns me is that there is so much attention and money on the fake news problem that I think we risk that news organizations that are doing fact-checking, that academics who are studying the impact of political news, of studying trust, studying people's beliefs, I think we risk that things are getting out of whack. And I hope that this can begin a discussion around the world of keeping things in perspective. And it's easy now to get excited about fake news because there seem to be new studies every week about it. But I worry that that has just gotten priorities out of whack. A couple other points that I'd like to make. One, I think part of the problem here is there's been a lot of emphasis on Twitter, and some of the studies have been based on how false articles have been spread over Twitter. And at least in the United States, Twitter is still reaching a relatively small percentage of people, but I think it represents a larger percentage of the academic research because the data is available. So I think we should realize Twitter is not real life, and that we should be wary about drawing conclusions from Twitter. One other point about who reads false news articles. So there's been some good academic research on who reads false news articles, and I haven't seen a study that says it's changing minds. It's not like people are reading these things and saying, oh, wow, okay, now I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. It is reaching audiences that have already made up their minds. So, all right, so with that, why don't I turn to Phoebe, and why don't you... Polly's going first. Okay, I'm going to turn to Polly.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Thank you for having me. So the question, has fake news been overblown? Yes, it absolutely has. It's way out of proportion. And I think if the chief proponent is Donald Trump, then I think we can all agree, yes, it's out of proportion. I'm more interested in whether it matters. And I think it really does matter because it plays into this idea and a feeling of mistrust in the press. And never have we needed facts more, never have we needed journalism more, and many audiences are disenfranchised, not connecting, and don't believe us. That's a huge problem, I think. I think it leaves us as journalists navigating two worlds of facts and feelings, and I think we need new skills to do that. Rational facts and then sometimes irrational feelings, but equally important in some ways. So I think that takes a whole new kind of set of skills and sophistication to get right. And I wanted to tell one story about my experience with fake news, not as a journalist, but last year, between the Guardian and HuffPost, I did a stint at the Red Cross as Director of Media in the UK. And during that period, we responded to the biggest news story, I think, of last year, and one of the most significant, which was the fire at Grenfell Tower in West London. And for those of you that don't know, this was a terrible disaster where a tower burnt down, 70 people died, and around 270 people lost their homes. Within hours of it happening, Red Cross was on the ground there, helping people, clothing them, giving them money, doing whatever we could to help. The government completely failed, particularly the local government, and it was a real failure of the state to help those people. And there was this incredible community response with everyone in West London, then everyone in London, then people from all over the country driving to West London and giving these donations. And this kind of donation mountain built up of clothes and toiletries and baby equipment. And it was piling up, and suddenly there was too much for the people that needed it. So as the Red Cross, we went in and distributed to the people that needed it, and then collected everything else. And the Royal Mail gave us this depot that's used for Christmas, and is empty the rest of the year. And we brought all the donations to this depot, and there were 3 football pitches worth of donations. It was an incredible, incredible sight. We decided the best thing to do with the stuff that wasn't needed was to sell it in our shops, with every penny going back into the Grenfell Disaster Fund. Meanwhile, on the ground, a story started to emerge that we had stolen the donations and that we were going to profit from them ourselves. And this was my challenge as Director of Media. How do I convince the people on the ground who need our help that we have not stolen it, that we're helping as much as we can? And there was one, in particular, one social media influencer, a DJ, who was really kind of fueling this idea. And you could track kind of where the information was coming from, and a lot of it was from this particular one woman. And I spent like 2 days at one point chasing her around West London, trying to convince her, having face-to-face conversations, trying to convince her. And it mattered at that point because some of the victims were starting to say to us, we won't talk to you because we don't trust you. And so it was interfering with our, if it was just a reputation problem, we could live with it, but it was affecting our ability to respond. So eventually, we managed to get to this woman, have the conversation, couldn't change her mind. It wasn't, you know, we weren't going to win this. And I had a conversation with one of my international colleagues who is used to responding to earthquakes and war zones. And he said, but what are you doing? Why don't you have community liaison people as part of your disaster response? Why aren't you working with the community. Like community liaison is finding those influencers and then involving them in decisions. And we said, but we're the British Red Cross, and we're in Britain, and we're in London, and we know these people. This is our people. And it was a real kind of moment of recognition that actually we were completely out of touch with the people in our own city. And I think I kind of tell that story because I think that idea of community liaison is now quite important for journalists to understand, involve, and be part of the communities and world that they're reporting on in order to report on those feelings as well as those facts.
Great. Thank you. That's really interesting. Phoebe.
Hello, thanks very much for having me. It's really exciting to be here. So I'm Head of Communications and Impact at Full Fact. Part of my job is about trying to get people who've said things that are wrong to stop saying them. So that's kind of where I come to this conversation from. So Full Fact, could I possibly have the thingy? Thank you, no worries. Cool. So Full Fact's been fact-checking since 2010, and we fact-checked 3 elections and 3 referendums. And I think we're quite unusual within the fact-checking community internationally in that we check politicians, but we also check media claims, claims from lobby groups, claims from charities. And more recently, we've been getting into online memes and images, because that's where a lot of people are going to get their news now. So we have this quite interesting overview of the sort of where inaccurate and unsubstantiated claims are coming from across the full range of media. And we ran a really cool project with First Draft during the snap election last year, where we saw all sorts of mostly visual claims. It was this kind of thing. Not all of them were wrong. Not all of them could be called misinformation. The one on the right with the Jim Carrey grinning is actually basically correct. So I think it's just important to make that point. So I've been at Full Fact for 5.5 years, and it's been really interesting seeing how the conversation around fact-checking has changed. And we used to have to tell our funders stories about the harm done by misinformation. And we had this one story about knife crime. There was a bill going through Parliament about sentencing, and The Sun, one of the big tabloids, ran a front-page headline saying that almost all knife crime is committed by under-18s. And a really well-known actress, Brooke Kinsella, who was in EastEnders, one of the big soaps, her brother had tragically been killed by a stabbing at this time, so it became this really big topic of debate. It was a big topic in Parliament. And we fact-checked The Sun's claim that all knife crime was committed, half of all knife crime was committed by under-18s. And we found that this came from an estimate by one policeman in North London. But we have official statistics on this, and the real figure was about 20%. But unfortunately, by this point, the law had been altered. There had been an amendment to include under-18s in that bill. And I still wonder what the outcome would have been if those MPs had had the right information, if Full Fact had been more influential at that time and would have been able to stop that claim from circulating. But since then, we haven't really had to make the case for fact-checking in this way, talking about harms. Since there was all this discussion about post-truth politics and fake news, people are kind of taking it for granted that, you know, misinformation is bad and it causes harm. But we've been putting together a briefing for the UK government on some of this stuff, on our perspective, over the last 8 years. And one of the things that came up was types of harm, and it reminded me about the fact that we used to have to talk about this all the time to get any money, to get any attention. And these are the ones that we came up with. So, people being wrong, you know, we have the equivalent of conversations in pubs, kitchen dinner tables, online, so in private conversations, on messaging groups. And I don't see those as having a huge amount of harm. I don't think it's the end of the world if people think things that aren't true. But obviously some of these have the potential to trend and go viral. And maybe that's where the harm comes in. Widespread misperceptions. Ipsos Mori have been doing really great work in their perils of perception research. They found across all different countries of the world, people have sort of wildly inaccurate views about things that happen in their country, about immigration, teen pregnancy rates, and so on. But I think in the UK, we have one interesting example from 2012, where there was a lot of inaccurate coverage of benefit claimants, people claiming welfare. in the press. And we had a really sad email from a disability rights campaign group who were saying that since all this inaccurate information had been going around about their sort of group, there had been a rise in attacks on disabled people. And so that's, again, where you can see the real harm coming in from misinformation. Radicalization, the Rohingya propaganda has resulted in lots of violence against those people. We see things like attacks on Muslims, and this kind of crosses over into hate speech, but I think when it's inaccurate, it's part of our court as well. Bad information leading to bad decisions. I've already talked about the Sun and the knife crime sentencing bill. Election interference has kind of been well covered in the last few weeks, so I don't need to go into that. Lack of respect and enthusiasm for evidence in policy making. So Tony Blair gave some evidence to the Leveson inquiry back in 2012, which was an inquiry into press ethics and practices. And he said that he'd had to change quite a lot of his policies on the European Union because of inaccurate information going around in the press. And I think this is a kind of really worrying trend, which we sort of saw a bit in the EU referendum. You know, we heard that people don't care about experts anymore. And I think we really need to guard the sort of trustworthiness and our respect for things like official statistics to make sure that we can have reasonable conversations that are rooted in reality. Distrust and disengagement, which I think Polly's talked about really well already. We know trust in government is low and stable. We've seen that Gallup poll from 1944, which found that a quarter of people thought politicians were out for themselves. So this isn't a new thing. People don't really trust politicians. And Ipsos Mori's Trust in Professions Veracity Index also shows trust in journalists, trust in politicians is low and stable. And I don't think that is misplaced trust. You know, we're asked all the time to believe things without being given any reasons to trust them. And then finally, the final harm, abuse of power. On principle, you just shouldn't be misleading people. So we have examples of all of these, but no proof of scale. I think Bill's kind of talked about that a bit. And you could certainly argue that politicians' day-to-day decisions have more impact than citizens merely sharing misinformation. And the point at which citizens become influential is at election time. You know, it's supposed to be once every 5 years in the UK, but that hasn't been the case. But I haven't seen any compelling evidence to suggest that people vote entirely based on facts. And, you know, we all know that emotions and tribalness come into it as well. And then finally, I just quickly wanted to talk about what the public thinks about all of this, because I think that's a really important part of the picture. So the Reuters Institute did some really good focus groups, which were written up by the Columbia Journalism Review. And they found that people talked about fake news as a spectrum or a question of scale. And asked to provide examples, they pointed to poor journalism, politicians who lie and exaggerate, as well as hyper-partisan news, and then, interestingly, also forms of advertising. And so the public has a really nuanced understanding of these issues. And I think we shouldn't forget what they see as fake news as well. And then another thing I wanted to bring to your attention. Populists every week do a poll about what news stories the public have noticed in the UK. And this is the week before the snap election, or of the snap election last year. So only 20% of people could name a story about the election itself, and 12% of people couldn't name anything at all. So I think when we're talking about all this, it's important to think about the harm that's being done, who's paying attention, what decisions are being made on the basis of information that's going around. Because I think that's a really useful way of thinking about why we cover what we cover as fact-checkers and journalists. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Alexios.
Sorry, I was busy tweeting Phoebe's slide because it's really good. Hi, and thank you for being here this morning. I know it's 11, so not quite morning, but gradually as the days go by at IJF, the limit of when the morning is goes further down. But I have sensed the spectrum change. I've been working in fact-checking for 6 years now. I've been running the International Fact-Checking Network for 2.5 years. And in 2016, I was kind of like a hawk on fighting fake news. And now I'm probably on the dove side of the spectrum. And I don't think I've changed. I think what's happened has been that sort of the ground underneath me has changed. That there has been like maybe we were paying too little attention to the problem before, and now we're paying a little bit too much attention to the problem. I don't want to suggest that there isn't a systemic problem with how our online information ecosystem is structured. There is a huge problem with that infrastructure, and we need to be working with Facebook and Google to fix it. But what I'm confident and secure is being overblown is the effects of fake news on elections. If I see another headline that says fake news won Donald Trump the election, fake news won Brexiteers the election, I will stop reading newspapers. I won't. But we have no evidence that people were brought to the ballot box exclusively, primarily, principally because of fake news. We have decades of research that actually it's really fucking hard to figure out what makes people vote one way or another. And yet we keep shouting that we know for certain this thing or the other. And we do this despite, thankfully, this increased attention on fake news has meant an increased amount of research on fake news. This is something that I'm very grateful about, that academics are turning their attention to it. And yet, every time a study comes out on this topic, we cover that same study in the same hyperbolic manner of OMG, fake news are drowning the truth, lol, nothing matters. And so I'll give 3 examples. Some of you may have seen the MIT study a couple of weeks ago published on Science, right? Wonderful study looking at years of Twitter data. And the headline for that study, as it was reported around, even from expert journalists, was falsehoods beat the truth on Twitter. Study, right? No chance for the truth on Twitter. Fake news overwhelms truthful news. Except the sample of that study didn't compare true news and false news. It compared stories fact-checked as true and stories fact-checked as false. I hope you see the distinction between those two things, right? No, not every true story gets fact-checked, right? In fact, the majority of true stories go out uncovered by the fact-checkers. So, for instance, for years, the most retweeted tweet in the history of Twitter was Barack Obama hugging Michelle Obama under the headline, 4 more years. That wasn't fact-checked by fact-checkers, right? And so covering that study in this sort of very misleading frame leads us all to sort of throw our arms in the air, give up, and say, whatever, nothing matters. And thankfully, and this I think has a hint of a solution, the researchers were very responsible of sort of being on Twitter, saying, hey, this is not quite what happened, this is what did happen. And I think that's, academics in this space are going to have a responsibility to rein in their press release teams and to sort of look at how the narrative covered their studies. Couple more studies that I want to mention. One in January, Brendan Nyan, Jason Reifler, Andrew Guess looked in what was a very unique study, because a lot of these studies are actually lab, right? And there aren't real life, quote unquote. But this study was actually conducted following the browsing habits of a bunch of Americans, and found that, hey, that echo chamber that we've been talking about obsessively for the past couple of years, maybe not quite as hard as we thought. That half of the people who were subjected to fake news stories were also subjected to fact checks. So yes, sure, there were people who only saw fake news, but were not quite as distinct as we thought it was. Many caveats. I don't have the time to go through them. It's not as sort of rosy as I am going to have the time to explain. But again, the coverage of that study from the New Yorker down was, this is another example of fact-checking being ineffective. So I think we need to draw many little lessons from these studies and not use them as an inevitable news peg for this real narrative of, we're drowning, run for the hills, be desperate. And I think the problem is that with this framing, we are drawing an interest in over-regulation, in over-legislation. It feels like there's a call for anyone who can do something to do something. And when that is maybe legislators who can't tell that you don't send an email on WhatsApp. That's an actual question from a senator to Mark Zuckerberg the other day. Or who think, as the Italian Minister of the Interior in the previous government thought, that the police should be fact-checking and set up a unit where you could send your fake news stories, who and how they were skilled to do this work, and who and how we think that law enforcement will be trusted to do this kind of stuff is beyond me. And increasingly, it's also risks sort of poisoning the well for most fact-checking in the EU, I think, because increasingly we're seeing it framed as fact-checking is our only arm against Russian interference. There's, newsflash, there's a lot of false information spread by pro-EU politicians, by pro-EU outlets, and the more we frame it as just across a polarizing divide line, we risk making actual fact-checkers work much harder. So just to wrap up and sort of return to what Bill was saying about political claims as well, I'm seeing a lot of media outlets around the world sort of jumping into debunking misinformation and false news. I think that's great. I would invite all of them to also jump into fact-checking political claims and political figures. They need to be held accountable. It's a little too easy to just target those terrible social media that aren't like us. We are media outlets, you can trust us, and a little too easy to sort of not go against actual political power and hold political power accountable, because that is what journalism should be doing. Thank you.
So to follow up on your point about, you wrote, I thought, really powerfully about the poor coverage of the MIT study. So what do we do? How do we encourage our colleagues who are writing about these studies to do it more accurately? Do we take an approach like Full Fact and call them up and be like, hey, that headline is wrong, that your lead, you misunderstood the study. Should we, and I guess the question is, who is we? Is it the IFCN? Is it you? Is it other academics? How do we push back on that?
You mean I need to offer a solution? Sort of like complaining isn't enough? Okay. No, I think we need to tackle this a bit systemically. And so we need to start the very outset from the academics, tell them that, hey, I understand you need to get funding for this research, and I understand that you are maybe on a tenure track, and therefore all news clips count, and therefore, but there's a responsibility to make sure that this works and this is communicated well. At the next level, there are, and I sort of touched on this a little bit, press offices for universities. There's some work on health studies. There's a great debunking site called Health News Review that looks at press releases on health studies and what universities put out. But I think I could almost see like a fact-checking site on press releases on all academic studies, because obviously they want to entice us and put catchy headlines. Because then when you finally reach to the journalists are like, well, the source is this reputable university. What are you telling me? Not that absolves them, but there's sort of, I think, also a couple of steps before. I don't know. I think maybe really just bringing academics and journalists in the room together and having each understand what the sort of incentives are for overemphasizing results. And in a structured journalism way, I would love a world in which we actually are able to say, to have all these studies tagged and say, this is also all the other studies that are related to this study, right? What other things has this researcher published on this? What has come out on the topic of fake news and elections in the past year? Just so to give readers a bit of a richer understanding. And I know it takes a lot more time and it's not as catchy, but I guess just good slow journalism would be a good start.
Phoebe, I'm curious for Full Fact, how, what's the mix of fact-checking that you're doing? How much is on political figures, either people or organizations? How much is on news organizations? And how much is on sort of viral or false news articles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I've been pushing internally at Full Fact. So just because we've had so many elections and referendums, we've done a lot of fact-checking of politicians and parties, and not enough of journalists. So we're about to launch a project fact-checking front pages for the next 3 to 6 months and kind of seeing what we find from that. and also thinking about when we do ask for corrections, which we inevitably will, what kind of response we get from that, and whether we can make people's newspapers' corrections processes better, which I think will be the case.
And what about fake news? Do you all do much debunking of those things, or is that more sort of focused when you get close to an election? How much of that do you do?
Yeah, definitely when we get closer to an election, we have a lot more resources. So with the first draft project I mentioned, we were able to set up a big monitoring kind of operation looking at things like Facebook groups, Twitter, like newspapers online. It was like a whole range of things, I think Reddit as well. But that's not really sustainable. That took kind of 8 people looking at that for 8 weeks to kind of get enough information that we could see what was actually the most important thing to check. But we get a lot of reader requests as well, people kind of who've seen stuff through WhatsApp or Facebook, and we try and check as much of those as we can.
Cool. Polly, you raised a really important question that partly caused by, I think, the concern about fake news, but also just a byproduct of this crazy, chaotic information age we're in, and that is trust. And you talked about getting audiences to believe us. Your example that the radio talk show host just wouldn't believe you. And you talked about how Huffington Post has tried to do much more outreach. Do you think that's effective? Is that something that we need to scale and do more of through, for all news organizations? How do we get people to believe us in this time when, there's so many different sources of information, some trustworthy, some not?
If you think about fake news having poisoned the journalists well, we discussed earlier there being kind of buckets of different kinds of fake news. And I think one of those buckets, I think that is on that continuum, is news that people don't relate to and don't feel is right. And I think that comes from 2 things that give us kind of potential solutions. One is that we are not like the communities we serve. As journalists, too white, too middle class, too London-centric in the UK, too out of touch with most of the country. And the other is, I think, something that's a real kind of structural change that happened with the kind of flourishing of digital journalism. Newsrooms came under so much pressure, particularly legacy newsrooms. I think we were serving so many different beasts, and I think an effect of that was just we didn't leave the office enough. We just didn't go out, and places like HuffPost that were set up as aggregators and a blogging network as well, but we were established as aggregators. It wasn't kind of part of our model to really go out and report. And that's what we're really focusing in on now. If we want to understand our audience, we need to be out there and part of it. So that's a big change that's come at HuffPost since Lydia Polgreen took over in America and I took over in the UK. Lydia did this fantastic thing where she put the newsroom on a bus and went around Trump America and made them just get out of the office and have conversations. And we've looked at that and are kind of doing a UK version, which is really just hiring reporters outside London. But that thing about digital journalism becoming more and more office-based, one of the really fascinating things I've seen is in hiring our first reporter in Birmingham. We've been talking a lot to the local newspaper there so that we don't just land kind of with no relationships. So we're talking about partnerships, those kind of things. And actually, the concerns they have as a local newspaper even are pretty similar. They're kind of re-establishing beats, local beats, which I thought I thought that was local journalism. But in local journalism where they've been doing papers and digital, people have become more and more office-based even at a local level. So I think kind of, for me, the 2 answers are be more like our audience and talk to our audience more, kind of shoe leather reporting. And I think there's a kind of data analytics side to that as well, where you can kind of get into understanding your audience better through better data. But nothing beats going out and reporting.
Yeah, no, it's like I always say to my students, grab a notebook and go talk to people. Yeah. Because I think there's a tendency, whether it's student journalists or adult journalists, to just kind of sit in your office and type and, you know, sort of opine and gaze at the ceiling and like, hey, go talk to people, interview someone, you know. And
do you know what, I think that is really fascinating, because I went from The Guardian, where I was often one of the youngest people in the room, to being really old in my office. And I've got this fantastic team of really young journalists. And I'm really struck by how much less they pick up the phone, let alone leave the office. You know, they're communicating by email and Slack, and, you know, actually talking to people. And you know, I've even realised that, like, my instinct, if there's something going on, is to give them a call and talk about it. And they're quite kind of nervous of talking on the phone even. It's like, and they're completely brilliant and brilliant journalists, but there's a cultural difference there for people who are complete digital natives.
At the risk of this panel becoming retitled Kids Today, but I totally agree. So, Phoebe, you talked about the Reuters Institute study on fake news. And so talk a little bit about that, because when I looked at that slide, and I remember when the study came out, I guess my concern was, again, that this term fake news has been so distorted, so misused, and that I think we need to be specific in what we're talking about. Did you take from that study that people will understand those nuances, and that they realize that the term's been so misused?
I think I'd maybe think about it more in terms of trust in public debate. And yeah, I think we're always being asked to kind of trust things without really being given reasons to trust them. So I guess that's why Full Fact always sources everything, and we provide lots of information about our funding and that kind of thing. And there's a really great philosopher, Honora O'Neill, who also sits in the House of Lords in the UK. And she did these Wreath lectures in, I think, 2002. And she said that we shouldn't be placing trust blindly like small children. We should be placing informed trust. And to do that, we need information and the means to judge that information. And that's kind of where Full Fact is coming from with all of this. And I think it's true of things that politicians say, advertising, things that journalists are telling us, that we should always be giving people reasons to trust and information to judge what we're saying as credible.
Alexios, you talked about the infrastructure and the need to improve the infrastructure. By that, do you mean that social media platforms need to do a better job of kind of filtering when there is false content? Sort of talk a little bit about that and where you'd like to see that go. And I guess if you could just answer this question, would you like to see data from Facebook indicating the effectiveness? This is sort of a running point that Alexios has made once or twice before.
Yeah, a couple of thousand times. So the infrastructural problem is really the sole novelty, right? It's full of examples of misinformation, of hate-filled misinformation, of crappy journalism pretending to be good fake news in itself isn't the new phenomenon. The phenomenon is that it can reach millions unfiltered from whichever point and person. And so unless and until that changes, so unless and until how we surface content on Google and Facebook has signals indicating the likely accuracy of that content, we're going to be stuck. And so, you know, to their partial credit, Facebook and Google are understanding this more and more and are trying to act on this, probably too slow. But the question of, can we make sure that those same photos that come out during breaking news situations just don't reach thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, is a technical problem very, very many times. I think Facebook could be even much more muscular and hire 100 fact checkers internally for breaking news situations on top of the partnerships it has with external fact checkers. But we need to remember that Google is part of it too, right? That as our major interface to obtaining facts, none of us, if we want to like sort of check whether someone was born at a certain time or where someone is from, you don't go on a fact-checking website, right? You Google it. And so, and for too long, that type of information, I always have this silly example. I'm sorry for those of you who may have heard it 12 times, but you know, my wife was pregnant at the very start. We didn't know what she could eat safely. We Googled is cilantro safe to eat? We were at a Mexican restaurant, and of course, the top comment featured snippet by Google was some rando anonymous blogger on Baby Center saying, yes, cilantro will kill the baby, it will kill the mother, it will kill the father, run. And so that's a pretty, you know, that's an infrastructural problem. Of course, just as to wrap up, as Facebook and Google do these things, they can't just hold on to their nice little lessons about how it's all going, right? Facebook now has been conducting the largest experiment in combating online misinformation in history since December 2016, and we still know close to nothing about it because they have not yet published the data about it. That is valuable data for researchers, it's valuable data for public policymakers, it's extremely valuable data for fact checkers to get better at our jobs.
So if we agree with the thesis that there's too much emphasis on fake news, how do we as fact-checking organizations keep our eye on the ball and still sort of resist the sexiness, the money, to keep checking politicians? And I mean, it sounds like you guys have done that.
I think it's probably, yeah, it kind of goes back to harm and the question of who's seeing it all. And I suppose the problem with misinformation outside of America is that there haven't been that many studies about the reach, the scope and scale of the problem. And so I think at Full Fact, obviously, we're always trying to use evidence to make decisions. So we've been a bit reluctant to kind of get too distracted by this question. But yeah, there's a lot of money in it. And I think this is kind of why I'm trying to bring the conversation back around to harms and kind of thinking about those earlier conversations we were having with funders. If and when this all blows over, we're going to have to go back to talking in that way and kind of really making the case for why fact-checking matters.
And
sorry.
Yeah, chime in.
I just wanted to 100% agree with that and say, because we've been thinking about this a lot, sort of two metrics, two things that fact checkers should consider. One is something that Africa Check, a great website based out of South Africa, does, is ask itself, what impact would it have unchecked, right? So considering all these harms, you know, Pope endorses Donald Trump. Honestly, what impact is that going to have? Just let it, you know, be frivolous. Donald Trump saying the unemployment rate is 40% and sort of sowing doubt on one of the key indicators and statistics of our society is a much more harmful thing. And the second thing is reach. I think we need to become a lot more sophisticated in measuring how many people are likely to have seen or to see this. And of course, with again, the American example is a bit too banal and obvious, but with Donald Trump tweets, that's already like, you know, millions of people. And so that, I think these are the sort of two questions that we need to be asking at all times.
Totally. You know, we were talking about the number of people reached by falsehoods in President Trump's State of the Union address far eclipsed the number of people who are being reached by these false articles. So why don't we turn it over to questions or comments from you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to disagree with us, and you know, love to hear what you're thinking. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Shane Greenup. I'm independent, working on a project called the Socratic Web. Bill, in your introduction, you mentioned the idea of fake news being overblown because is this fake news story going to change someone to being a Trump supporter, to voting for Trump? And Alexius, you sort of said that. It's like, how much influence do these articles have? The research shows we don't know much about what causes people to turn out. My concern with fake news is not the black and white on or off effect of an article. I think the concern is the consequence of it over years. And so that the Pope article, what effect does that have? It may be the final straw that breaks the camel's back on someone who's not on the fence but Catholic. And then they find out the Pope endorses Donald Trump, that's all I needed. Or it could just be another fact that they hold in their head so that a year down the line they go, well, he's got this, he's got that, he's got this, and the Pope endorses him, I may as well. Because, yeah, so how much do you guys think about that aspect of fake news, the accumulation effect?
Sure, the sort of corrosive effect over time. Bingo. Alexios, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Shane. I think what concerns me more than sort of the micro level thing, because again, I think switching decisions is really, really difficult to measure. There was a study looking at whether people's minds change when fact-checked on claims, and Trump supporters' minds did change when fact-checked, but their voting intentions did not, right? So it's really hard to decide like what that. But I see a great corrosive effect is this sort of like a pox on all your houses, right? The information ecosystem is all so noisy, it's all so crappy that I'm just gonna distrust and disbelieve most of the stuff. And that's, you know, I'm not a Russian scholar, but having read some, I understand that disinformatia worked this way, right? It wasn't so much a question of, hey, you need to trust me, but hey, everything around you is something you kind of need to navigate with doubt and skepticism and cynicism, not skepticism. And so that, I think, is where the corrosive effect kicks in.
As someone who comes from a scientific background, I hate seeing this about science in the media. Scientists say beer will make you live forever. And then the public starts going, scientists don't know what they're talking about. The scientists never say that, like, you know, the academic research thing you were mentioning.
Just don't ask the scientists about cilantro. Do you agree? I mean, gets to your point about the corrosive effect leads to things like they wouldn't believe what was in that warehouse. So how do we combat this corrosive effect because it's sort of a diffuse problem. It's not like we can say, well, this fact check was right. How do we restore this trust on a grand scale, given the fact that many people think it is fake news if they're reading an article they disagree with, or they're reading an article where they think there's a mistake in it?
Well, I mean, I think I have like huge respect for all the fact-checking organisations, and as I've worked as a fact-checker myself, and it was one of the most rewarding jobs I ever had, really. And but I think the point is, it's a real indictment on journalism that we need fact-checkers on journalism. You know, fact-checking is absolutely central to every kind of journalistic endeavour. So the fact that we've had to kind of have this flourishing trade in fact checkers is like, it's a real shame on us, I think.
I wonder if the solution to this is more transparency, more what my colleague Mark Stencil calls discovery journalism, where we sort of take the reader along as we learn things. Like Donald Trump said this, we wondered if it's true. We called this person, he said this. We called this person, she said that. And sort of take people along and show them how thorough we are as journalists.
So that's the fact-checking live blog I ran kind of 8 years ago or something was exactly that. The point of it was working with readers to test a big news theme of the day. So we asked a question in the morning, didn't provide the answer, but provided the kind of claim in the morning. I went about my kind of journalistic endeavour in trying to establish the truth around that, kind of documenting my journey in a live blog, and then bringing up comments from below the line. And with a kind of distribution strategy around that plugged into the right networks for that story. If it was a tech story, would tweet it from the tech account. If it was a home affairs story, a home affairs editor would tweet it. You would suddenly, you know, each day you could kind of click into a different expert group that would help you answer that question. And one of the reasons it was such an incredibly rewarding job is that the readers loved it. They loved that process of being engaged and the openness of it. There were downsides. It's a very slow way of doing journalism. You know, it's easier for me to kind of find the expert than to negotiate. Sometimes below the line felt like a massive therapy session. But, you know, I think that was one of the reasons people liked it as well, that kind of engagement and conversation around how you do journalism, really.
Sure. Let's see, actually over here, yeah.
Hi, Nick Newman from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. So maybe a comment first and then a question. So the comments about the focus groups that we did, and actually we've done some more this year, which have been fascinating because it didn't come up spontaneously last year. So obviously poor information did, but not necessarily the term fake news. This year it came up. So essentially, spontaneously in all the countries we looked at. So, you know, that awareness, the way the media have covered it, is in turn sort of feeding back and colouring it, which I think is worrying. But the same themes come up essentially. You know, there is a massive disconnect between public views of fake news and the narrative that we have here in these conferences or that politicians are talking about. And that's pushing us towards probably the wrong answers and over-regulation, all things that you talked about. So I think having a clearer sense of what the problem is, which is about, you know, all of those things together, splitting them up and being clear about them is critical. The question is really, so far fact-checking in terms of how it's being integrated within Google and Facebook has been done. You know, as you search, you then come up with these things, and they've tried to integrate it, and there's a problem of visibility. But one of the things that the media companies, one of the things that the platforms are doing now is to try and take those signals and affect the value of the source as it is then ranked within Google or within Facebook. So Huffington Post, for example, might be downgraded because they've asked about the trust of, or upgraded because they've asked the trust of the brand. And fact-checking signals might be used to affect what we see. So I'm interested to know, A, do you think that's a really significant development as it begins? And what dangers you see in taking this purely at the brand level?
I mean, we have to start incorporating signals, right? Like that's otherwise the infrastructure will keep, especially on Facebook, leaning heavily on emotion, where the single monetizable event is an emotional event, the like, the share, whatever. On Facebook, actually, that's where signals have already started being implemented for about a year and a half, and now increasingly around the world. That if a news item or story, a post, has been found to be false by the fact checker, so flagged as such, it gets reduced reach. We don't know how much that reach has been reduced, what that means compared to its usual reach. So I think that's happening. I think it needs to be at the most granular level possible, because once you start saying this is a disinformer, then it just like casting aspersions on an entire brand person or page rather than on a single item, that becomes problematic. I also think we don't need to overcorrect there either. So we should make sure that these stories don't reach over a certain limit, right? So that Facebook should be cutting down, but not that they suddenly all vanish or that we cut down entire pages' reach dramatically. This is where, again, broken record, if Facebook shared data, we'd have a sense of how much that matters versus how much the warning that this story was flagged as false matters to readers. My suspicion is that the most important effect will be algorithmic rather than necessarily human, but I don't know. And I'd be glad to learn that I'm wrong. But yeah, signals are important. We need to play very, very carefully. You know, there was a mistake with Google earlier this year that erroneously flagged a couple of right-wing blogs on stories they hadn't fact-checked. That's the kind of misfire that we really can't afford.
Yeah, I think it's really important to avoid that the definitions of good journalism to bad journalism, whatever signals we're using, need to respect partisanship and opinion publications that you know are an important part of the spirited political discourse. I think it's also good to realize that there are different consumers of those signals. So advertisers can be more discerning and say, well, we're not going to advertise on these kind of sites. And so I think it's a good idea that, you know, there's been talk about, and several ventures are trying to identify what are the false news sites and which are the sites that spread false information. Advertisers can be more selective than, say, a platform like Facebook or Google, and in terms of what they rule out. I think I really like Alexios's point about granular and sort of looking at the article level rather than casting an aspersion and saying, well, that site has published 6 false stories in the last 6 months, therefore we can't trust it, you know. And so we have to tread carefully in that area.
Just following on from that, I also think the definition of trust, and when you ask people about trust, is really, really important, because Breitbart readers trust Breitbart because it affirms all of their views. HuffPost readers, core readership, trusts HuffPost because it has quite an open and very almost kind of kinder approach to journalism. So I think kind of the legacy of us having that solutions-focused journalism, a really open bloggers network, has actually kind of made people feel like it's an approachable and less cynical news brand. You know, I'm not going to pretend that HuffPost has a legacy of standards that would match the New York Times. That's definitely the direction we're going in. But I think trust means very different things in different contexts. You know, Guardian readers treat The Guardian like a Bible, but they're probably The Guardian's biggest critics as well. It's a complete love-hate relationship.
I think you're right to bring that up. I think the question of trust them to do what, and that's, I think the interesting thing about the Facebook survey is that it wasn't saying, do you trust them to tell the truth? Do you trust them to kind of support your views? I don't know, it was a bit vague. But going back to Nick's original point about Google and Facebook and their various kind of fact-checking schemes, as far as I know, they haven't really gone out and asked fact-checkers, is this actually what you think would be useful if we were starting this from scratch? And Full Fact has been asking them to do things like enable corrections notices on posts. So if a story has been put out, being able to flag to anyone who's liked it or shared it that story has changed, that would be a huge change. And particularly on Twitter, you know, you can't correct a tweet, you can't edit it once you've sent it. So I think there are lots of ideas that fact-checkers and practitioners working in these areas would have, which haven't really been listened to. So yeah, I think it would be great if we could have some projects that were starting from scratch, from the beginning, working in collaboration with people who do have expertise in this.
Mark Frankel from BBC. I just wanted to pick up, I think you've made some fantastic points about reach and the fact that so much stuff is either not seen or seen for the wrong reasons. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about amplification and algorithms, because essentially, if we're reliant on the debunk and the fact bus to be more visible, we're also reliant on those social media algorithms to boost it. And I think we're in danger of trying to come up with solutions that, frankly, are never going to be implemented, because without the power of those platforms and companies giving a positive boost to what you've actually produced and making it more visible and downplaying, in a business sense, the stuff that's emotive and connecting with people that people will always want to share because they're titillated or fascinated for all the wrong reasons that we've discussed, what's likely to change?
Sure. Great point. And I tell you that in the case of Google, they are, I think, doing a better job of promoting fact-checking. And this grew out of an idea from Glenn Kessler, the fact-checker at the Washington Post, who told Google back in 2015, why don't you start tagging fact checks in search results? And so the Google executive you mentioned this to was intrigued. I think it's something they probably had already been thinking about some. And so we were brought in at Duke to help work with Google and schema.org and develop a tagging system for fact checks that we developed that's called Claim Review. And Claim Review is a schema that anyone who publishes can use to tag fact checks. And then we created, to make it easier on the fact checkers, a project called Share the Facts, where they can create this claim review and a little visible widget that goes in their articles. What Google has done with that is encouraging. If you do a search and there is a fact check that's related to it, that fact check will get highlighted. And it will show up as what Google calls a rich text snippet. So it'll have the statement, the name of the fact-checking organization. And so it distinguishes it in search results. Anecdotally and from what we've heard from the fact-checkers, the schema has elevated how fact-checks show up in Google search results. So fact-checkers are getting more traffic. People are seeing more fact-checks. And I think that's an encouraging first step. Google has also highlighted fact checks in Google News using this schema that we developed. And so I think that's a great first step. There's also now, depending on what country you're in and what device you're using for Google News, there is a fact check box that where fact checks show up. So we're getting there. I'd love to see more use of that schema by Facebook. I think there's an opportunity there. There's also an opportunity for what you're suggesting, which is the linkages between the fact checks and the original false content. Some of the fact checkers are putting those putting in URLs to the original content, and that has the potential in search results to show up a speech and then have underneath it, here are fact checks of that speech, or an article, oh, here's a fact check of that article. So progress, encouraging, but it's still early. Yes, down here.
To talk about cilantro. I'm the Director of Communications at the European Food Safety Authority. So you Google cilantro pregnancy, you get, style craze, and then you get the Huffington Post. And the only way to get something sensible, the Huffington Post, quite a good sort of balanced report, but is to put the source. So it's to know that there is a European Food Safety Authority, that there is, I don't know, NHS or Ministry of Health. So the way is, and we discussed it this morning in the previous session, to look at the popularity versus credibility criteria to lift sort of views. But the question is, what is the role of public administrations and scientific organizations? And how can we better work with fact-checking organizations? There's the high-level group on misinformation that has some quite bland recommendations. But in practice, what can we start doing?
I could maybe go first with this, because Full Fact does a lot of work with bodies that produce kind of robust quality information in the UK, so we work a lot with the Office for National Statistics and statisticians who work in government departments but are independent of ministers. And we also work with the House of Commons Library, various expert groups like the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Migration Observatory, which is at Oxford. And I think one of the things we've been pushing is for an equal emphasis to be placed on communication as well as analysis, and I think that is now kind of starting to percolate through. And we've done kind of, worked with hundreds of statisticians saying, could you move this one caveat from page 6 to page 1? And then we've seen a drop-off in inaccurate headlines because of that. Well, I think because of that. And I think encouraging these people, the people at the top of these organizations, to engage more with the public, think about how to build trust in a digital age. It's not all just one way anymore. You have to kind of have back and forth. You have to have back and forth to get people to trust you and see you as open. So I think there's a huge amount of work to be done, kind of building trust with especially younger audiences who are going to grow up, not, having many more sources of information and not necessarily trusting places like the Office for National Statistics, even though they are very trustworthy. And they do have a lot of quality assurance, they have a regulator, but yeah, you can't take it for granted anymore.
We got time for one more question. If we got anybody else? Otherwise, we'll end with a shameless plug by me. If you're interested in fact checking, I'm doing a demo session this evening. I think it's at 6 p.m. about some of the things we're doing in automating fact checking, tools that we've built and that are being used by fact checkers in the United States, and some consumer tools that we've developed and are starting to use. So I think it's called Automation in Real Life. So we're thankfully beyond that phase where we're saying, imagine if, and we're now actually deploying things that are in use. So if you're interested, I hope you'll show up this evening. So I just want to thank the panel. This has been a great discussion, and thank you for coming.
L'hai recuperata?
Ok.
Niente, va bene così.
È il segno dei tempi. Cioè,
Si parte? Forse abbiamo sbagliato sala. No, buongiorno a tutti, buon sabato a tutti. Vedo intanto con piacere che l'amo della felicità legata alla parola giornalismo funziona. È abbastanza una fake news, però ci si può lavorare per farla diventare real. No, intanto davvero grazie di essere qua con noi così numerosi, è un piacere, un onore e cercheremo di essere all'altezza della vostra attenzione. In realtà quando abbiamo iniziato a pensare un po' di fare questa cosa insieme con Massimiliano Gallo, fondatore e direttore del Napolista, e con Federico Ferrazza, direttore di Wired Italia, abbiamo immaginato di provare un po' a entrare nelle nostre storie professionali, ma nella maniera il meno possibile autoreferenziale e il più possibile utile invece a dare degli strumenti di decodificazione del percorso di carriera, di vita, di scelta di ciascuno di voi e di noi, perché per noi il giornalismo è stata una scelta di vita, una missione, ma anche effettivamente credo una fonte di soddisfazione, di felicità, di frustrazione, di fatica, come poi sono le cose della vita. E abbiamo pensato che fosse interessante confrontarci con voi e anche con le vostre curiosità e le vostre domande su davvero diversi modelli di professione e di vita, di modi di fare giornalismo, e anche con diverse stazze, con diverse misure. Allora intanto ai colleghi e amici chiedo subito una domanda semplice, se loro sono felici nella loro vita di giornalisti e quali sono gli ingredienti di questa soddisfazione o insoddisfazione. Partirei dalla big corporation, quindi da Federico.
Bene, sì, buongiorno a tutti, ringrazio Jacopo Tondelli, direttore e fondatore degli Stati Generali, visto che lui non si è presentato e almeno
che cafone.
chiudiamo il cerchio delle presentazioni. Se sono felice lavorativamente, no, personalmente sì, ma lavorativamente sì, e questa felicità nasce dal fatto che stiamo vivendo un momento, allora, per certi versi chiaramente fonte di preoccupazione, perché quando tu non sai quello che succederà nel prossimo futuro, chiaramente non sei mai tranquillo e non sai mai appunto quello che ti devi aspettare. Però io la vivo come se io stessi costruendo il mio futuro, o se insomma contribuissi a costruire il futuro del mio posto di lavoro. Pensare che il futuro me lo stanno scrivendo degli altri che si occupano dalle big corporation della tecnologia ad altri soggetti, questo chiaramente non può essere fonte di felicità. Invece pensarla in maniera opposta, cioè mettere al centro le proprie aspettative, la propria voglia di fare, e provare a contribuire a costruirsi il futuro insomma, della mia persona, ma anche come lavoratore, ma anche del posto in cui sono, è sicuramente il motivo principale della mia felicità. E poi il fatto, insomma, magari poi ne parliamo un po' più approfonditamente dopo, il fatto che ci siano alcune operazioni che a Wired stiamo facendo e che stanno funzionando, e che è la cosa che mi rende più soddisfatto in questa fase qui, oltre al fatto che chiaramente il mio editore è soddisfatto del mio lavoro, almeno fino ad oggi, e è soddisfatto il mio gruppo di lavoro. Molto spesso per tanti motivi, perché il modello di business è completamente cambiato, perché prima i giornali si vendevano e oggi vendono solamente spazi pubblicitari o poco di diverso. Chiaramente ci sono tutta una serie di problematiche che hanno a che fare con l'etica, che hanno a che fare con proprio con la missione di quello che facciamo. Vedere le persone con cui lavoro che sono felici delle cose che fanno, perché facciamo delle cose interessanti, perché facciamo un nuovo utilizziamo le tecnologie per fare giornalismo, e il nostro centro non è la tecnologia, ma è sempre la nostra missione, i nostri valori, che sono appunto missione e valori di Wired, e sono quelli che sono al centro, e utilizziamo tutti gli strumenti della tecnologia per scaricare a terra questa forza. Insomma, mi rende contento.
Ok, quindi per adesso da parte di Federico c'è solo la parte bella, dopo arriveremo anche alle fatiche, così almeno dopo il tuo editore ha qualcosa di cui lamentarsi quando avrai detto finalmente la verità. Massimiliano, il tuo percorso professionale, siccome tu hai qualche mese più di me di Federico, anche se li porti molto meglio, ma inizia un po' prima, e poi siccome hai iniziato a fare il giornalista da molto giovane, tu hai fatto in tempo a vivere davvero anni in cui ancora l'industria della carta era un'industria solida. I giornali all'inizio degli anni 90 vendevano un casino di copie. Se pensiamo ai numeri di oggi, moltiplichiamo per 10 circa. Sono passati 24-25 anni e moltiplichiamo per 10. Ed era il sogno di ogni giornalista, era in fondo quello di davvero poter entrare, non so, per esempio al Corriere del Mezzogiorno, se uno iniziava la sua carriera di giornalista nella tua città come a Napoli. Mi piacerebbe che tu provassi a raccontarci un po' l'evoluzione di questo diverso modo di provare soddisfazione nel fare il nostro lavoro, tu che davvero hai vissuto dall'interno un'epoca ancora dorata, ma poi anche il suo dissolversi e poi l'arrivo del giornalismo online come frontiera di autorealizzazione.
Allora, buongiorno a tutti. Sì, diciamo, non mi vergogno a dire che durante Tangentopoli, quindi estati 1992-1993, io lavoravo all'Alto Adige, giornale campano ovviamente, a Bolzano e a Trento, e lì addirittura al piano inferiore della redazione centrale di Bolzano c'era la tipografia, quindi si finiva di lavorare alla mezza, all'1:15, il giornale cominciava a girare, cioè tu lo finivi in tipografia con il proto che cambiava le ultime lettere se c'era un rifuso, e poi il giornale cominciava a girare intorno all'1, ed era una cosa, devo dire, emozionante, perché tu portavi la copia a casa e a quel momento, forse perché ero molto giovane, comunque io non avvertivo la fatica. Ero entrato in redazione alle 10 di mattina, uscivo, tranne poi lo spacco a pranzo all'1 di notte, felicissimo come poche altre volte, diciamo, sono stato.
Quando hai detto proto ho visto sguardi proprio persi.
Allora, il proto è il capo della tipografia, è il primo della tipografia, e c'era questo, dalle 10 di sera alle 9 di sera si cominciava a parlare continuamente con la tipografia, che doveva prendere le pagine, cioè si disegnavano le pagine, poi cominciavano ad arrivare i titoli, gli articoli, i titoli, le fotografie. Addirittura all'epoca si andava l'archivio fotografico era praticamente manuale, quindi serve un Craxi addolorato, quindi si andava lì, si premeva la lettera C, ricordo questo rullo che girava, e io rimanevo incantato perché avevo davanti, ma proprio potevo sfogliare, scartabellare 100 foto di Craxi. Quindi le prime volte io rimanevo estasiato, ovviamente prendendo dei cazziatoni, cioè, ma che cazzo stai facendo? Ci serve rapidamente la foto, mentre io stavo lì a guardare, oh, questa foto è bellissima, questa è meravigliosa, quindi un po' imbarazzante per certi versi. E quindi da quel momento a oggi, insomma, sono passati 25-26 anni ed è passato un mondo. È passato un mondo e io credo di aver vissuto quella sensazione, perché dalla la sensazione proprio dello sfarinamento, di un mondo che andasse in dissoluzione, andava in dissoluzione. Ricordo ancora all'Alto Adige il rapporto con il pubblico. Capitava che alle 10 di sera, alle 11 di sera arrivassero dei pescatori con delle carpe, delle trote giganti che chiedevano, diciamo, una fotonotizia sul giornale l'indomani, perché questa carpa era così grande che meritava un obolo, diciamo un obolo, una medaglia sul giornale. Progressivamente non c'era ancora internet, quindi progressivamente sono cambiate due cose secondo me. I quotidiani, i giornali cosiddetti tradizionali hanno cominciato a chiudersi, cioè entrare in un giornale negli anni 80, negli anni 90 era la cosa più semplice del mondo, non si doveva neanche bussare alla porta, la porta era aperta, si entrava e si parlava con questi giornalisti che in genere erano personaggi borderline, un po' mattarelli, non avevano una loro vita, sempre comunque con la curiosità, l'attenzione a quello che stava accadendo fuori. Poi sono cominciate ad arrivare queste porte, il primo sbarramento, il secondo sbarramento. Per me, per come l'ho vissuta io, ho visto sempre meno, diciamo, pescatori, per utilizzare questa metafora, e soprattutto avevi la sensazione, io poi sono stato, diciamo, l'ultimo giornale cartaceo è stato il Riformista, in cui si aveva la sensazione che uno scriveva e dall'altra parte, tranne il politico, poi fondamentalmente non c'era più quel feedback. E contestualmente invece stava nascendo, era nato internet, cominciavano i primi giornali, noi ci sperimentavamo con i blog, e questa sensazione di sui blog, su internet, di riuscire ad avere immediatamente una reazione a quello che scrivevi, che era quello che io provavo negli anni 90. Io ricordo anche sempre a Bolzano recensioni teatrali con i protagonisti dello spettacolo che il giorno dopo vennero in redazione quasi per picchiarmi. Insomma, c'era una sensazione fisica del giornalismo, secondo me molto molto bella, che poi ho perduto, e io credo che anche questo mi abbia poi spinto al web, a internet, oltre a Jacopo Tondelli che è il principale responsabile poi di questa conversione, dove finalmente secondo me ho ritrovato una sensazione fondamentale per il giornalismo, perché il giornalista deve scrivere, deve riportare una notizia, anche un'opinione, e poi questa notizia o opinione deve suscitare una reazione. Cioè, secondo me, se non suscita una reazione, beh, insomma, vuol dire che non si è colto proprio nel segno.
Grazie Max. Lui dice che io sono il principale responsabile perché, come forse qualcuno di voi ricorderà, insieme fondammo e guidammo l'inchiesta.it per i primi anni della sua vita. Però a onor del vero devo dire che io forse, se non avessi incontrato Massimiliano al Riformista ormai tanti anni fa, non avrei fatto il giornalista, quindi quantomeno gli ho restituito, diciamo, la pariglia, ci siamo scambiati un po' le colpe lungo gli anni. Ripartirei proprio da questo punto che sottolineava molto bene Max. A un certo punto nei giornali si ha iniziato ad avere la sensazione che tu scrivevi, tu decidevi cosa fare, ma di là non c'era nessuno. Cioè l'assottigliamento dei lettori del giornale di carta poi ti restituiva un senso di eco, di vuoto, no? Tu parlavi e poi magari capivi che di là c'era solo l'addetto ai lavori, che magari era anche un diretto interessato, proprio interessato nel senso etimologico del termine, no? Che fosse un potere economico, che fosse un politico, era l'unico a cui interessava che quella cosa uscisse. E internet e il giornalismo digitale, tutto sommato, con i suoi strumenti anche di rilevazione, no? della audience, molto più precisi di quelli del giornalismo che chiameremmo oggi tradizionale, questa cosa l'ha un po' rotta. Il punto è, e questa è una domanda che faccio a tutti e due, ma la rotta davvero o paradossalmente ancora oggi e quanto se si resiste l'idea che se tu non vai sulla carta, se non vai sul quotidiano di carta in questo caso non esiste? Quanto ancora è solida questa difesa dell'idea che se non sei rappresentato lì in fondo non sei davvero rappresentato? E qua le due esperienze, diciamo, di Wired da un lato e del Napolista dall'altro sono molto diverse, ma secondo me possono illuminare da due angoli diversi la questione.
Aspetta che io l'accendevo e lo spegnevo, quindi non so se mi voleva far parlare o no. Allora, secondo me c'è ancora questa idea che sulla carta sei più figo e sul digitale lo sei un po' meno. Credo che sia però solamente una questione, diciamo, generazionale, ti direi quasi biologica, quindi quando si estingueranno quelli che lo pensano ancora, le nuove generazioni non lo penseranno più. Cioè, faccio l'esempio di Wired ha 5-6 milioni di utenti al mese digitali, e il giornale ne fa, comprese le copie digitali, vabbè, però mettiamo insieme che quello sia tutto un silos print, fa 50.000, 60.000 lettori. È evidente che per noi è molto più rilevante il digitale e arriva a molte più persone. La cosa che secondo me non è propriamente vera, o meglio, cioè adesso senza fare delle critiche particolari, però diciamo che molti giornali hanno perso un po' la sfida del digitale, cioè intendo i giornali di carta. Cioè quando è arrivato internet si sono applicate le stesse, il mercato ha provato ad applicare le stesse logiche che funzionavano sulla carta, quindi più lettori più vai bene. Io sono della scuola, insomma, uno dei miei maestri professionali è Carlo Verdelli, che mi diceva sempre meglio una copia in più che una copia in meno, insomma, che è una banalità alla Catalano per chi ricorda indietro tutta, però è evidente che è così. Sul digitale è evidente che tu debba avere un grande numero di utenti, però penso che nel lungo periodo avere solamente tanti utenti non ti porta da nessuna parte, e faccio un discorso prettamente diciamo di business ed economico, cioè l'idea di avere tanti utenti a volte ti fa perdere un po' l'identità del giornale che sei, perché molti giornali di carta sono nati in un'epoca pre-internet, consolidando una propria identità, e che funzionava per idee politiche, per settore. Se sei un giornale economico ovviamente ti occupi solamente di alcune cose, se sei un giornale sportivo di altre. Poi è arrivato internet e l'impressione che ho, soprattutto per i quotidiani, è che siano un po' diventati tutti uguali. Cioè la rincorsa al sempre più ampio numero di utenti ha un po' appiattito l'offerta informativa per i lettori. Io credo che questa cosa qui abbia premiato nel breve periodo, perché non ci scordiamo che il web e i giornali su web nascono negli anni 90, in un'epoca dove la televisione commerciale era il modello della televisione commerciale, funzionava benissimo, intendo televisione commerciale quella, diciamo, gratis e finanziata dalla pubblicità, e quindi si pensò che quello fosse l'unico modello possibile di sostentamento dei giornali. E quindi più utenti avevi e più funzionavi, e tutto sommato questa è un'onda lunga che è arrivata fino ai nostri giorni, cioè ancora oggi se hai più utenti sei più rilevante per il mercato. Credo che questa cosa però stia un po' finendo, o comunque comincia a mostrare un po' il fianco, primo perché hai dei competitor molto agguerriti che hanno numeri più grandi di te e che sono interessati al giornalismo, guardate i principali 2 sponsor di questo festival. E che nessuno dei giornali oggi presenti in tutto il mondo può competere a livello di numeri con Facebook e Google. E poi c'è un tema di cosa sei. Cioè, io vedo, per esempio, gran parte del mio lavoro abbiamo titolato così il panel perché io non faccio più il giornalista e quindi, e quindi se qualcuno vuole cercare la felicità nel giornalismo, auguri. No, vabbè, è una battuta, no, non è vero, si può cercare e trovare. Però io mi occupo molto dello sviluppo del business di Wired, e tutte le aziende che vengono a parlare con me, che vogliono investire su Wired, cioè cercano in Wired dei valori e cercano in Wired un posizionamento, direbbero gli esperti più di me di marketing. Cioè vogliono che la loro azienda, che il loro messaggio, poi non con marchette ma con operazioni diciamo un po' più, diciamo, per fortuna più profonde, si costruisca un racconto di quello che loro fanno. Se io avessi negli ultimi anni cercato solamente di crescere dal punto di vista degli utenti e quindi andando a occuparmi di tutt'altro, perché insomma Wired poi alla fine si occupa di cose che sì sono molto interessanti, fighe, belle, e mi diverto tanto, però chiaramente di per sé non è che sono il figlio della Ferragni o altri temi che sono magari meno
imprescindibili.
Esatto, meno imprescindibili per il dibattito pubblico. Ecco, io penso che avere una forte identità oggi ti dia una mano sia ai lettori per capire, ok, tu mi stai dando quei contenuti, e per la costruzione del rapporto di fiducia, no? Si parla tantissimo di, forse se dovessimo fare un attack cloud del Festival del Giornalismo di Perugia, fiducia sarebbe la parola più grande. Arianna ne parla sempre dell'idea che comunque si costruisce un rapporto tra i lettori, e quella fiducia si costruisce anche dicendo sempre chi si è. E dall'altra parte ci sono gli investitori, che sono sicuramente una parte fondamentale del modello dei giornali di oggi, che investono su di te se tu hai una forte identità, se tu sei riconoscibile, se li aiuti a dire ok, la mia azienda è più tecnologica e innovativa e quindi investo su Wired. Se avessimo fatto solamente un percorso di crescita di utenti, secondo me avremmo oggi meno opportunità di essere felici.
Certo. Max, la tua esperienza invece della persistenza dell'egemonia, diciamo, culturale della carta al di là dei numeri forse è molto significativa, perché da un lato sta in un campo come quello dello sport e del calcio in particolare, che è una delle luci, la luce principale attraverso cui guardate la realtà, dove oggettivamente sul digitale i numeri sono enormi, pazzeschi, e dall'altra però anche sta dentro a una realtà cittadina come quella di Napoli, che pur avendo generato una delle principali imprese digitali di informazione italiana, penso a Fanpage, però forse sconta ancora una certa resistenza culturale, o forse no, dicelo tu.
Beh sì, anche Fanpage, no? Che è il giornale esclusivamente online, credo più forte d'Italia, con più numeri, più letto, e adesso è quest'anno anche protagonista di un'inchiesta di cui si è molto discusso. Quando parlano dei giornalisti di Fanpage, li definiscono i ragazzi di Fanpage, come se uno che lavorasse sul web è un eterno ragazzo, mentre invece ci sono uomini, donne.
Non è vero, non siamo giovani.
L'esperienza del Napolista è un'esperienza strana, perché si coniuga, è strano esprimere questo concetto che adesso esprimerò, che è quello dell'essere un giornale masochista fondamentalmente, quindi si coniuga con la felicità, perché il Napolista è un giornale online che si occupa di Napoli, nato fondamentalmente per gioco, diciamo, da 2 giornalisti napoletani emigranti, io e Fabrizio D'Esposito, che lavoravamo al Riformista. con l'idea di parlare di Napoli cercando di sfrondarla dai luoghi comuni, quindi un'impresa pressoché titanica, che però diciamo, può essere interessante perché rispecchia fondamentalmente il fondatore, cioè io ho creato un giornale che è lo specchio di me stesso. E quindi non faccio alcuna difficoltà a fare il Napolista e mi viene naturale, mi viene spontaneo e mi scontro sia con una idea che c'è a Napoli, anche altrove, ma a Napoli forte, cioè di questa, come se esistesse soltanto la carta. Questo parlo però del mondo professionale, cioè molti giornalisti considerano la carta, il giornalismo cartaceo a Napoli di serie A rispetto al giornalismo online. Viceversa, invece, per quanto riguarda il rapporto con i lettori è completamente diverso, perché diciamo, purtroppo i giornali cartacei hanno sempre meno lettori e invece si incontrano, diciamo, faccio riferimento a quello che ho detto prima, cioè ci sono molti feedback e tante persone seguono il Napolista e soprattutto è un giornale molto seguito fuori Napoli. Questo mi interessa, è interessante dirlo perché noi siamo un giornale fortemente identitario, considerato un giornale napoletano, che però riscuotiamo molto meno successo a Napoli, dove siamo visti un po' come diciamo dei traditori, tra virgolette, traditori del pensiero napoletano, e invece apprezzati in altre zone d'Italia. Noi abbiamo 2, per esempio, concessionarie di pubblicità, entrambe di Milano, cioè noi stiamo sul mercato a Milano pur lavorando a Napoli, parlando del Napoli e di Napoli. A Napoli fondamentalmente non abbiamo pubblicità, non ci sono agenzie pubblicitarie che ci cercano e quando abbiamo parlato con loro non siamo mai riusciti ad arrivare a nessuna conclusione, mentre invece siamo appetiti è una parola grossa, comunque diciamo ci siamo considerati, anche questo è un esempio, veniamo invitati al Festival Giornalismo a Perugia, a Napoli fondamentalmente non ci cula nessuno, ecco, diciamo, per usare un termine inglese. Ieri c'è stato tra i vari panel che ho seguito, c'era una frase che mi ha colpito molto, cioè il lettore non va sempre inseguito, cioè bisogna scrivere anche ciò che il lettore non vuole leggere, che secondo me è un passaggio fondamentale, importante, che segna una distinzione netta tra il giornalismo cartaceo e il giornalismo online, perché il giornalismo online può cadere in questa tentazione, perché poi alla fine la prima cosa che ti chiedono è quanti numeri fai, perché tu puoi aver intervistato Putin, puoi aver dato per primo la notizia del bombardamento in Siria, ma poi dipende da quanti utenti hai, quanti utenti unici, le pagine viste, il tempo di permanenza e tutto il resto. Però bisogna superare questa fase e riuscire a scrivere quello che tu pensi e proteggere la tua identità. Questo è un passaggio fondamentale, come diceva Federico, che poi viene apprezzato, perché non è detto che mentre il giornale cartaceo, avendo meno feedback, tu scrivi quello che vuoi, magari sì, ti inviano la lettera. Ci sono ancora quei 5-6 pazzi che, se ci fate caso, sono sempre gli stessi, le stesse firme che girano da tutte le rubriche delle lettere del Corriere della Sera, la Repubblica, il Messaggero, la Stampa, tutti sono sempre gli stessi. E quindi
hai dimenticato il Foglio, che in questo spazio ha un ruolo importante.
No, devi sul web è più complesso scrivere quello che non piace al lettore, perché l'aggressione è praticamente immediata, cioè tu te li vedi quasi urlanti davanti a te, quindi è anche all'inizio bisogna abituarsi al web, non è così semplice. Io all'inizio ne sono rimasto un poco scioccato, devo essere sincero, poi mi sono anche abituato e oggi mi diverto. Però avere un'identità è importante, perché fa sì, bisogna abituare il lettore a leggere anche qualcosa che lui non gradisce, e nel momento in cui tu vieni percepito come una persona, come un giornale, diciamo, intellettualmente onesto, alla fine ti si apprezza ugualmente, e avere un'identità alla lunga, quando poi anche gli sponsor, le agenzie di pubblicità hanno cominciato a conoscerti, i numeri cominciano, come diceva Federico, a diventare meno importanti. Però bisogna avere alla base un'idea chiara, secondo me, di quello che si vuole fare, e raggiungere poi un giusto compromesso tra il mercato, che ovviamente va sempre, come dire, va sempre osservato, e le proprie idee. Però, diciamo, io a questo punto voglio anche dire, diciamo, fare un'altra cosa, perché sennò Jacopo Tondelli sta cercando di fare esclusivamente il moderatore di questa tavolata, ma lui è stato colui il quale ha messo su l'inchiesta, che è stato un giornale ed è ancora un giornale online, diciamo, forse, diciamo, rivoluzionario per certi versi. È stato il primo giornale nato all'inizio del 2011 con una serie di soci, con soldi che sono stati fondamentalmente come dire, conquistati da Jacopo, seguendo anche il modello di Eugenio Scalfari su Repubblica. È stato uno dei primi che è riuscito a mettere su da solo praticamente un giornale, e a convincere anche altre persone, tra cui me, che sono rimasti colpiti dall'entusiasmo di questa iniziativa. Quindi mi piacerebbe che anche tu parlassi della felicità, e tu sei stato uno, diciamo, dei pionieri della seconda generazione di internet.
Sì, aggiungo solamente una cosa, visto il modello potresti intervistarti da solo, il modello Scalfari.
No, devo intervistare Papa Francesco, allora scusa, se proprio quello è il modello.
Senti, sì, va bene. No, e soprattutto ricordiamo una cosa, aggiungendo quello che diceva Max, che lui lascia il Corriere. Cioè che quando si parla di felicità e di professione, forse per molti di noi lavorare al Corriere della Sera era il massimo che ti poteva capitare nella vita, e quindi lui insomma si fa crescere la barba come Eugenio, e lancia l'inchiesta, ma soprattutto lascia anche il Corriere, che insomma mi sembrava una scelta forte tanto quanto.
Sono un po' imbarazzato da questa imboscata, diciamo, coordinata dei miei amici. Dunque, io quando iniziamo con un gruppo di persone, di soci, a concepire l'inchiesta, lavoravo al Corriere da 2 anni e mezzo circa, c'ero arrivato sulla soglia dei 30 anni dopo diversi anni al Riformista, prima con Antonio Polito e Massimiliano, poi con Paolo Franchi e sempre Massimiliano. Arrivo al Corriere, io venivo da un'esperienza, quella di un piccolo giornale, è vero, molto romanocentrico, politicista, come era il Riformista, dove però sostanzialmente c'era, secondo me, un tasso di libertà e di autonomia, anche di spazio per la creatività e le passioni dei singoli giornalisti, di cui allora ci lamentavamo perché ritenevamo che non fosse abbastanza. Ti ricordi, Max, che io dicevo però questa qui non me l'avete fatta fare? Sì, vabbè, ma hai già scritto 25.000 battute oggi, dai, domani. Ma dopo capii, entrando nel grande giornale, con tutti, come dire, anche la forza in più che ti dava di scrivere in un posto come il Corriere della Sera, alla redazione economia, ma capii, insomma, quante sfumature di grigio ha o di verde ha la libertà e la possibilità di esprimerti al di là della libertà proprio dell'eventuale censura, no? Parlo proprio dello spazio che puoi avere semplicemente. Quindi io ero stato, quando nasce l'idea dell'inchiesta e iniziamo a pensarci, iniziamo a modellarla sia dal punto di vista economico e societario che poi dal punto di vista editoriale e giornalistico, stavo al Corriere da 3 anni e vedevo di fronte a me una prospettiva che poteva essere anche molto bella, importante, ma come tutto quello che facciamo ci deve assomigliare. Io magari, voglio dire, stando lì e continuando a lavorare, devo dirlo, in un ambiente comunque molto professionale, con fior di professionisti, però dovevo sapere che bisognava aspettare, guadagnare spazio. Poi le grandi aziende in questo, giornali o no, questa è una cosa che adesso che faccio un po' meno il giornalista e un po' di più, come dice Fede, ti devi occupare di fare il manager. Quando vedi le grandi aziende anche dal lato del direttore che cerca investitori, ti rendi conto che le dinamiche si somigliano, che siano giornali o che siano grandi compagnie che fanno bibite, più o meno la macchinosità interna e per forza di cose, no? la lentezza con cui i processi vengono metabolizzati è un po' sempre la stessa. E io che appunto avevo 30 anni e che caratterialmente non sono fatto probabilmente personalmente per stare bene in un contesto in cui cresci del 2% l'anno e devi stare molto attento ogni volta anche a come ti posizioni, anche a chi ti leghi, no? Perché questo conta nelle grandi aziende, anche questo di qualunque tipo, di fronte all'opportunità del comunque far nascere in posizione per me molto gratificante, importante, un quotidiano digitale in un tempo in cui oggi fare un giornale online, uno dice facciamo un giornale online, sì, in effetti ne manca uno, no? Ma nel 2010, fatto poi in un contesto in cui il rapporto era quello con soci forti che venivano dal mondo dell'economia, della finanza milanese, romana, era oggettivamente gratificante e non sarebbe giusto, non sarebbe onesto negare la dimensione dell'ambizione come una delle cose che costruisce anche un percorso di felicità, naturalmente di rischio, perché la storia di quella vicenda è una storia comunque che per me, per Max, per altri colleghi, voglio dire, mi piace ricordarli, quelli che erano con noi fin dall'inizio, Jacopo Barigazzi, Lorenzo Di Lena che con me adesso ha fondato Gli Stati Generali, Michele Fusco. È stata una storia comunque di un'impresa che a un certo punto ha visto bruscamente interrompersi il suo percorso. E perché questo fa parte della dimensione dell'ambizione, del perseguimento della propria felicità e anche del rischio di vedere comunque quel percorso interrompersi quando le leve oggettivamente non sono tutte tue, perché questo è. Ora, in questo senso devo dire che è una scelta di cui quella di andare via dal Corriere per dedicarmi allora all'inchiesta e poi ad altre esperienze, tra cui quella che adesso invece occupa e un po' descrive la mia vita professionale, che è quella degli Stati Generali, è una scelta che rifarei assolutamente e di cui non mi pento proprio per nulla dal punto di vista della mia soddisfazione e realizzazione, anche se è chiaro che se fossi rimasto per esempio al Corriere della Sera allora gestendo sarei più ricco o meno povero, insomma adesso dipende da che lato la guardiamo, però non credo che sarei più contento perché per me, per come sono fatto io, era e resta molto importante poter costruire qualcosa che sento come un luogo di libertà. Su questo voglio dire una cosa che si ricollega a quanto diceva Max prima, no? Sul fatto che ogni tanto bisogna anche avere il coraggio e prendersi la briga di disturbare il lettore invece che sempre di accarezzarlo. Noi lo facevamo abbastanza all'inchiesta, va detto che noi ogni tanto diciamo questa cosa ce la prendevamo proprio con tutti diciamo il portato poi anche di disabitudine, di poco allenamento. Oggi siamo tutti più abituati a prenderci un insulto su Facebook, non che ti faccia piacere ma nemmeno ti dispiace troppo, ma allora magari c'era un'ondata, una massa che si alzava altissima e a cui eri meno pronto. Una delle ragioni per cui quando abbiamo con Lorenzo Di Lena concepito Gli Stati Generali in un certo modo, volevamo che fossero uno spazio in cui in fondo noi non avessimo il controllo delle opinioni e della linea e volevamo anche farci sfidare apertamente dalle persone che scrivono e che dicono cose o guardano le cose con filtri che non sono i nostri. Qualcuno è anche qua in sala e lo saluto. Le cose che scrive Fabio Salamida o come le scrive spesso non ci trovano d'accordo, ma noi siamo molto contenti che Fabio e molti altri possano avere uno spazio creato da noi, costruito da noi, in cui sfidano apertamente quella che è la nostra opinione, la nostra sensibilità e tanto più quella di tanti lettori, ovviamente, no? Che sono meno eleganti di così nell'esprimere il loro dissenso, vero Fabio? Ecco, questo per me è ad oggi una delle ragioni forti di soddisfazione, quello di aver costruito uno spazio di libertà in cui chi ha talento può metterlo alla prova e sul quale noi non abbiamo voluto rivendicare un controllo. Adesso però,
cioè, la palla.
No, adesso però io rilancio subito con una domanda perché me l'ero preparata. Diceva Federico, appunto non faccio più il giornalista, poi lui ironizza, in realtà lo fai come il giornalista, però è vero che in tutte le nostre vite, no? Vedete anche nel discorso di Massimiliano e ovviamente nel nostro modello di business, che è un modello apertamente e strettamente imprenditoriale, il lavoro di tutti noi, di noi tre, è sicuramente un lavoro che mischia la capacità giornalistica, di direzione, di coordinamento, ma proprio per forza di cose, per stare in piedi, noi perché la nostra impresa si alimenti, lui perché Condé Nast non lo cacci, dobbiamo fare tanto lavoro appunto di rapporto con le aziende, di fundraising e curarci di come va la baracca dal punto di vista economico. Insomma, proprio in questi giorni dalle parti di Condé Nast, no, c'è stata una certa polemica suscitata in realtà da una sanzione irrogata dall'Ordine dei giornalisti che ha sostanzialmente, se ho capito bene, rimproverato il direttore editoriale del gruppo del fatto che un po' di giornalisti si lamentano che non fanno abbastanza i giornalisti, nel senso che in fondo si dice che vengono troppo utilizzati o comunque vengono utilizzati e dedicati a mansioni più di scrittura di articoli sponsorizzati, di branded content, di branded journalism, che tra l'altro è uno dei grandi temi che attraversa da qualche anno a questa parte e quest'anno in particolare giustamente le discussioni del Festival di giornalismo. Allora, in tutto questo, sapendo che insomma rischiamo tutti, io di sicuro le rischio, penso sia normale ormai qualche sanzione dall'ordine perché ci permettiamo anche di cercare di far stare in piedi la baracca in modo da poterli pagare anche i giornalisti dopo, perché poi dopo se salta e non paghi più gli stipendi magari per l'ordine sei in ordine, ma non so bene se sia meglio, però ecco vorrei un po' che mi raccontaste, magari Fede se ti va a partire da questo preciso episodio, un po' com'è la vita dell'imprenditore, del manager giornalista.
Se possiamo interrompere lo streaming così non è pubblico e io posso rispondere in totale libertà. No, scherzi a parte, ce l'eravamo detti, avrei risposto a fronte del tema tranquillamente. Detto che non conosco, e credetemi, non conosco nel dettaglio la vicenda perché non ho sentito ancora Luca, che è appunto il nostro direttore editoriale, per sapere un po' come era andata, perché l'ho saputo sui social che era arrivata questa diciamo richiesta di incontro, poi non la chiamerei neanche sanzione, ma insomma c'è stata una richiesta di chiarimento. Allora, nello specifico di quello che succede dalle mie parti, credo che sia, io adesso voglio approfondire proprio perché non capisco il motivo per cui l'ordine ci ha richiamato. Come tantissime altre aziende editoriali facciamo dei branded content, facciamo insomma diciamo quelli che una volta si chiamavano più pubblicitazionali advertorial, oggi sono un po' più evoluti dal punto di vista del racconto, anche perché le aziende sono più pronte a insomma a interloquire con i giornali su questi temi. Lo facciamo nella massima trasparenza, quindi dicendo quando un contenuto è sponsorizzato, quando non lo è. Credo che questo sia l'unico criterio poi che separa, diciamo, il lavoro ben fatto nel rispetto dei lettori e il lavoro che non è fatto bene, cioè dire al lettore questo contenuto è frutto di una collaborazione commerciale con un determinato partner. A Wired non mi è mai successo. In Condenasse succede molto perché abbiamo dei giornali, dei brand che sono fortemente posizionanti, no? Non solamente Wired, ma anche Vogue, Vanity Fair, GQ, Glamour, vabbè, insomma adesso senza fare pubblicità al mio editore, però ci sono ovviamente tantissime aziende che decidono di fare dei percorsi di comunicazione con noi proprio perché siamo in grado di raggiungere dei profili che a loro sono molto, per loro sono molto interessanti. Io credo che questa lotta o questa richiesta sempre maggiore da chi è purista e dire i branded content sono il male del giornalismo, credo che sia non lo so, mi sembra veramente una polemica inutile, sterile e...
Mica come le marchette non dichiarate, che invece hanno
Esatto,
sempre fatto un gran bene al giornale.
esatto, cioè ci sono stati, cioè nel corso insomma, gli articoli su una determinata azienda, non una in particolare, ma insomma sulle aziende sono sempre stati fatti nei giornali, non sono mai stati dichiarati, e quindi sono delle vere, appunto come le chiamava Jacopo, delle vere e proprie marchette, e su quello non c'è mai stato fino in fondo, mi sembra strano che siamo stati richiamati quando abbiamo cominciato a fare bene il nostro lavoro, cioè è una roba che mi sembra fuori di testa. Detto che le marchette si fanno non solamente, ecco, per parlare in maniera un po' più alta, non solamente a scopo economico, ma si fanno a volte anche a scopo relazionale politico, cioè quante interviste avete letto al politico che ha lo 0, solamente perché magari era il marito della figlia dell'editore, e che magari voleva costruire lo stadio e non lo costruisce più.
Aspetta che con questa mi sa che la so.
La sai, vero? E quindi, insomma, credo che sia veramente un problema che non esiste. Cioè, tra l'altro, cioè, capita, non sempre sfortunatamente, però ecco, capita che a volte si facciano dei progetti con delle aziende che hanno dei grandissimi e validi contenuti che vogliono comunicare, noi gli diamo una mano a comunicarli meglio, il lettore conosce delle storie che altrimenti non avrebbe conosciuto, poi se quella roba lì è sponsorizzata ma è scritto ed è chiaro che è sponsorizzata, io non ci vedo veramente nulla di male. Spero di non essere fortemente disetico a dire una cosa di questo tipo.
Non lo so. Adesso si è già riunito alla commissione centrale della morale giornalistica e stanno già prendendo provvedimenti. Se ci sono domande, interventi, curiosità, visto che abbiamo ancora una ventina di minuti, assolutamente sentitevi da questo momento in poi del tutto liberi di intervenire come... Prego. Aspetta che serve un microfono, se no dallo streaming, che salutiamo chi ci ascolta, si perdono il tuo intervento.
Buongiorno. Volevo fare una domanda a Massimiliano Gallo per una cosa per cui sono rimasta un po' male. Cioè, hai detto che con il Napolista, insomma, ti sei prefissato l'obiettivo di pulire Napoli da tutti quelli che sono i luoghi comuni che insomma la avvolgono, e hai anche detto che i napoletani ti vedono un po' come un traditore del loro pensiero. Immagino che tu da napoletano in primis scrivi per loro, perché sarebbe... Volevo sapere perché ti vedono traditore del loro pensiero, cioè qual è la differenza tra te e loro, insomma.
Grazie per la domanda, guarda, mi sento io di ringraziare.
Allora, non pulire Napoli dai luoghi comuni, cioè il nostro è un racconto, cioè il Napolista è un giornale nato per raccontare Napoli e filtrare, a nostro avviso, Napoli dai luoghi comuni, non pulire, perché non è che filtrare è il termine più, secondo me, più corretto. Napoli viene sempre raccontata a livello mediatico come se è una grande bolla, un grande luogo comune. Noi ci occupiamo tanto di calcio, no? E ad esempio sempre il grande pubblico di Napoli, il meraviglioso pubblico di Napoli. Poi se vai a vedere, Napoli ha meno spettatori di Milano, ha meno spettatori a volte anche dello Juventus Stadium. Insomma, anche a Napoli ci sono tante partite con pochi spettatori, perché se il prezzo è più alto la gente va allo stadio, se il prezzo è più basso la gente non ci va. Ma questo è un esempio, ne potrei fare 1000. Non so se perché io ho lavorato tanto fuori, ma non credo. Ho sempre avuto, Napoli è una città per certi versi particolare, ma per certi versi uguale alle altre. Io ho sempre avuto un'idea di Napoli come una città più o meno come le altre. Certo, la mia è una posizione sicuramente minoritaria, però ci sono tanti napoletani che poi vivono fuori Napoli. Quindi noi siamo molto letti a Milano, siamo molto letti a Roma, siamo anche molto letti all'estero. Secondo voi non è detto che per essere napoletani bisogna sempre... e poi non è vero che il napoletano si lamenta in continuazione, non è vero che il napoletano è piagnone, non è vero che il napoletano non ha voglia di lavorare. Insomma, ma non sono cose che abbiamo scoperto noi, nel senso... Il primo Troisi, ricomincio da 3, è tutto basato su questo, cioè il napoletano che non può viaggiare, perché il napoletano quando va fuori è solo un emigrante. Quindi noi cerchiamo lo applichiamo al calcio principalmente, ma non solo al calcio, e quindi ci attiriamo diciamo, le ire di coloro i quali invece difendono questo vessillo della napoletanità che a nostro avviso non esiste, cioè non c'è la napoletanità. C'è che uno nasce a Napoli e decide di vivere a Napoli o no. Credo che la fondatrice di questo festival sia napoletana e vive a Parigi, non so dove, vive a Perugia, insomma. Non è che c'è un marchio, si è napoletani e lo si può declinare in tanti modi. Può essere napoletano e ti può non piacere la pizza, questo è diciamo la base del napolista.
Davvero? Questa cosa succede.
È come il brasiliano che deve per forza saper ballare. Insomma, cerchiamo di sfrondare questo senso di Napoli e quindi per questo io credo siamo molto più apprezzati fuori Napoli che a Napoli, però non potremmo fare un giornale diverso perché questa è la nostra idea, cioè quando scriviamo delle cose che piacciono di più al pubblico c'è una parziale forzatura da parte nostra.
Poi domani, quando andiamo a San Siro a vedere Milan-Napoli, voglio vedere se non esiste la napoletanità. Domani ne parliamo. Prima aveva chiesto... Scusa. Vabbè, no, vai, dopo ho visto anche Fabio di qua. Certo.
Grazie. Allora, prima Jacopo ci ha parlato della sua esperienza al Corriere della Sera, descrivendola, comunque filtrando il messaggio che le grandi testate giornalistiche siano in realtà diventate oggi delle grandi imprese, attente al fatturato, attente alla crescita. Ora, mi è capitato qualche settimana fa di aprire il Corriere e di leggere che Urbano Cairo diceva torneremo a dare un dividendo ai nostri azionisti. Ecco, quest'idea che ci sia questa attenzione alla crescita e comunque l'attenzione al business, no? A vedere la testata giornalistica come un'impresa, non comporta poi una svalutazione dal punto di vista dell'informazione, nel senso c'è una maggiore attenzione a vendere copie piuttosto che a informare veramente.
Bella annosa questione. Ti dico due cose al volo. Intanto grazie. Proprio negli anni in cui lavoravo al Corriere uscì un libro che se non vi è capitato vi consiglio di recuperare. Raccontava un altro mondo, benché sia meno di 10 anni fa. No, lavoravo ancora al Riformista, poco più di 10 anni fa, ma era un altro mondo. Si chiama Il Bacco del Corriere, l'ha scritto Massimo Mucchetti, che è stato uno degli editorialisti di punta e degli analisti economici e finanziari di punta del Corriere della Sera per un po' di anni, poi è stato senatore nell'ultima legislatura, quella che si è appena chiusa per il Partito Democratico. Lo cito perché quel libro sta esattamente tutto su questo punto. In realtà racconta una storia, tra l'altro anche una storia divertente, a suo modo divertente e gustosa, ma sta proprio tutto su questo punto. Cioè un giornale, per essere davvero tale, forse deve essere un'impresa. Deve essere un'impresa. Il problema vero è come tu fai a vendere le copie e che lettori ti vai a cercare e quali lettori esistono, perché questo è il punto vero. Vedi, se un giornale non è sostenibile economicamente, è per forza di cose dipendente da altre dinamiche, che sono quelle degli assetti proprietari, diremmo così, no? Dare un dividendo agli azionisti, poi sarebbe interessante capire Cairo di che azionisti parla adesso, visto che l'azionista fondamentalmente è lui, quindi forse finalmente si darà un dividendo, ecco, questo è probabilmente quello che vuol dire e ci sta del tutto ed è giusto, perché alla fine lui questa cosa la fa per fare impresa, non per fare un'altra cosa, la fa per avere esattamente come la faccio io, la fa Massimiliano, la fa Federico, la fa per una soddisfazione che è anche economica. Ora però il punto vero è che il punto di equilibrio che tu giustamente solleciti è un punto di equilibrio molto complicato, perché tu da un lato, se non sei sostenibile economicamente, sei del tutto dipendente da qualcuno che ti dà soldi in cambio di cosa? Chiaramente di un'informazione morbida, di un'informazione favorevole alla rappresentazione dei tuoi interessi. E la storia dell'Italia è una storia piena di editori non puri. Cioè, se noi facciamo i conti e guardiamo chi fa in Italia negli ultimi decenni editoria solo per fare soldi con l'editoria, chi c'è? Silvio Berlusconi, l'ingegner De Benedetti, gli Angelucci. Cioè, mi sembra complicato, no? Caltagirone. Non so, cioè, c'è Urbano Cairo che di fatto fa quello di mestiere e basta, e lo fa per fare i soldi con quello. Quindi, ripeto, la risposta non credo ci sia. Tu tocchi un punto che è un punto di equilibrio che chiama l'equilibrismo.
Se posso aggiungere, cioè secondo me questo è l'unico, in realtà è l'unico modo per essere, per fare dei giornali di qualità, cioè pensare che devono essere sostenibili. Faccio un esempio, Wired l'anno scorso, nel 2017, ha chiuso il suo miglior anno dal punto di vista economico e questo è il momento in cui io sono più libero di fare quello che voglio. Se avessi chiuso male o se il trend fosse negativo, avrei molta più pressione da parte del mio editore, che è un editore puro. Io lavoro non solamente per un editore puro, ma anche per una multinazionale che nasce negli Stati Uniti, quindi con delle regole molto forti dal punto di vista, quindi se non stiamo in piedi mi cacciano. Tant'è che insomma, penso che Condé Nast è uno dei pochi che agita il mercato dei direttori editoriale, perché insomma ha un turnover fortissimo di quelli che possono mandare a casa, e cioè i direttori e vice direttori. Secondo me è sbagliato pensare che il giornalismo abbia solamente una missione, cioè è la missione. L'obiettivo ovviamente è informare i lettori, però questa cosa qui si deve basare su un'impresa solida. Tu non andessi mai a un ristorante e dire ma allora tu vuoi più coperti e quindi si mangia male. Non lo penseresti mai. E così anche un'azienda editoriale deve puntare, chiaro, deve trovare l'equilibrio tra offrire un buon prodotto e con quel prodotto farci dei soldi. Io penso che un buon prodotto che non fa soldi non esiste. Cioè se informa solamente e non sta in piedi sul mercato, la mia idea è che non sia un buon prodotto.
Fabio. Una domanda a tutti e tre un po' sul ruolo dei social network, che ovviamente escludendo 3 o 4 giornali, forse neanche ci arriviamo, sono un po' gli strilloni da una parte di quelle che è un po' tutta la nostra attività, no? Soprattutto Facebook, perché ormai Twitter è più un social network per addetti ai lavori e poco altro. La domanda un po' è questa. Visto che si tratta comunque di società che hanno anche dei loro algoritmi, dei loro sistemi di diffusione e che stanno cambiando e che cambiano continuamente, tra l'altro ci sono state anche ultimamente delle modifiche, quanto Facebook ad esempio è semplicemente lo strillone e quanto rischia per certi versi di influire anche non solo sul modo sul sistema di scrittura, per esempio penso al linguaggio SEO per l'indicizzazione su Google, ma anche in alcuni casi sulle linee editoriali, perché poi ne abbiamo parlato anche quando abbiamo, insomma io personalmente e anche Jacopo molto spesso parlavamo del discorso del clickbaiting o del discorso di come alcuni contenuti non giornalistici talvolta vengono diffusi, le fake news vengono diffusi attraverso un utilizzo del titolo, degli attacchi e di tutta una serie di cose che diciamo, giornalisticamente sono sbagliate, e quanto diciamo, l'utilizzo lo strillone social network rischia di modificare e stravolgere le linee editoriali dei prodotti? Questa è la domanda.
Grazie, non so, ti ringrazio per la fiducia, anche perché come forse sai la questione è dibattuta di recente anche al Senato americano, ma proveremo a dirimerla proprio qui.
In maniera più autorevole, tra l'altro.
Ma io credo che Facebook è un grande strumento. Per rispondere a questa domanda io tornerei anche a quello che aveva detto prima Federico. Uno poi cerca di imporre la propria identità, devi adeguarti un poco allo strumento, però poi ti fai conoscere. Io credo che in questo sia importante anche avere dei rudimenti di giornalismo tradizionale, perché formarsi esclusivamente secondo le regole diciamo di ingaggio di Facebook, secondo me è pericoloso dal punto di vista giornalistico, non ti forma completamente. Però poi uno ha non è detto che per stare sul mercato oppure per avere più like devi per forza fare clickbaiting. Certo, alcuni che fanno clickbaiting hanno tanti click, però si può fare anche diversamente e poi si viene anche apprezzati. È un lavoro un po' più lungo, però Facebook secondo me non è il male, anzi è uno strumento importante che consente di raggiungere tante persone che magari prese dalla pigrizia non digiterebbero direttamente il napolista.it e possono conoscerla attraverso Facebook.
Ma sì, Facebook come Google, che insomma i due strumenti digitali diciamo, per eccellenza, cioè, descrivono un ambiente, cioè contribuiscono alla formazione dell'ambiente in cui le informazioni ci sono. Prima Max diceva, sostanzialmente dice gli articoli che noi facciamo o generano delle conversazioni o fanno parte di una conversazione, altrimenti se non generano reazioni è inutile che li facciamo. Adesso provo a sintetizzare e a fare mie le tue parole, però sostanzialmente diciamo questo. E Facebook e Google contribuiscono a fare questo. È chiaro che se sono i due principali ambienti digitali frequentati dalle persone, devi un po' seguire le loro regole, però appunto mai perdendo l'identità e adattandoti, ma in fondo così è stato sempre, cioè voglio dire i giornali sono fatti in una determinata maniera perché riescono a essere aperti dalle mani altri dalle braccia, vengono fatti in un determinato modo perché stanno in un'edicola, probabilmente li faremmo in maniera diversa. Poi chiaro ci condizionano, l'esempio classico, non so se l'ho già fatto a questo festival, però vi ricordate quando è stato eletto Ratzinger Papa, il manifesto fece il titolo più bello che fu Il pastore tedesco, e è chiaro che quella roba lì su Google non funziona, perché prova a cercare pastore tedesco e probabilmente non esce fuori Ratzinger tra i primi risultati. Ti devi un po' adattare, ma in fondo è la storia proprio dell'uomo, cioè che è proprio del mondo, che noi ci adattiamo diciamo, al contesto in cui viviamo, anche l'evoluzione è così.
Certo, poi il tema generale è che questi due soggetti che sembravano player tra gli altri appena qualche anno fa o così li consideravamo, oggi sono a un altro livello, cioè sono il perimetro da gioco, sono l'arbitro, sono loro che costruiscono le regole in maniera di fatto sempre imponderabile, per cui si va avanti per prove, e questo è un grande tema, ma è un grande tema del rapporto tra capitale e lavoro, direi, per dirla alla vecchia.
E aggiungo solamente una cosa, cioè non è... cioè se noi pensiamo cioè, che il futuro del giornalismo, la felicità nel giornalismo, delle imprese editoriali sia determinato dalle aziende che fanno tecnologia, non abbiamo capito nulla. È arrivato l'iPad, tutti, tra cui il primo il mio editore, a dire leggeremo tutti i magazine sull'iPad. Nessuno legge i magazine sull'iPad. Cioè provare a mettere dentro i contesti analogici nei contesti digitali è completamente sbagliato. Ricordate Second Life? Tutti a dire vivremo. Chi è che ha ancora un account su Second Life? Credo non esista più, tra l'altro.
No, vai.
E torniamo al discorso di identità, cioè o un brand, un giornale, io quello che dico sempre è che Wired non è un giornale, ma fa un giornale. Wired è un sistema di valori, è una comunità, è un insieme di cose che non è solamente un prodotto. Poi oggi fa un giornale, fa un sito, fa degli eventi, fa formazione, fa tante altre cose. Domani cambierà l'ambiente in cui ci muoviamo e io devo essere in grado di portare quel sistema di valori su altre piattaforme, su altri strumenti. Se noi pensiamo che Facebook e Google determineranno il nostro futuro e saranno loro che dovranno dire a noi cosa dovremmo fare, non abbiamo capito completamente niente, è meglio che ci andiamo a cercare la felicità altrove.
Raccogliamo le ultime domande che appunto ci hanno già qua e poi ne vedo una là in fondo, grazie.
Io volevo tornare un attimo sul rapporto che diceva anche Massimiliano sui commenti, praticamente il ruolo dei commenti per il giornale digitale. Secondo me, lavorando sulla gestione di questi commenti, che è ancora un po' primitiva, si può avere con il lettore un rapporto talmente diretto che potrebbe essere anche utilizzabile in modo più efficace. Se per i social, quelli che noi chiamiamo algoritmi, in qualche modo danno delle tracce che orientano la macchina Google per andare a destra piuttosto che a sinistra, come giornalisti, come direttori, potremmo lavorare sulla gestione di questi commenti un po' anche per educare il lettore, no? Mi sembra strano che finora tutta quella parte che è il rientro e il ritorno diretto, quello che voi prima chiamavate la montagna che avanza, la montagna di reazioni che può anche spaventare, sia finora abbandonata un po' a se stessa, non venga sfruttata anche in modo commerciale, ma perché no, anche in modo educativo. Io penso sempre un po' alla tirannia della demenza, no? Cioè noi andiamo sempre più a calare, viviamo i social e dobbiamo un po' gestire anche questo abbassamento progressivo del linguaggio. Perché non fare dei feedback che possono venire, del rapporto che può nascere dal commento, uno strumento utile per educare un pochino anche quello che è il nostro pubblico digitale.
Grazie. Ne raccogliamo un'altra e poi chiudiamo.
Allora, io volevo chiedere, visto che si dice che la maggior parte delle notizie vengono lette sul cellulare, come riuscite a mettere insieme questo, quindi la velocità di fruizione, la grandezza dello schermo, con l'approfondimento? Ho visto che in particolare Gli Stati Generali ha degli articoli piuttosto lunghi e piuttosto impegnativi da leggere. Come mettete insieme queste due cose?
Grazie per gli aggettivi gentili. No, sull'educazione, allora io sono molto, confesso anche qui, sono molto combattuto, nel senso che da un lato mi ricordo una volta all'inchiesta, uno dei primi grossi, clash che abbiamo avuto con i lettori, con Massimiliano ci diciamo, vabbè, però aspetta, era un caso che ricorderai, la Bergamini, la lettera di Deborah Bergamini, donna forte di Silvio Berlusconi nella gestione delle TV, che spiegava la sua passione per il burlesque, che noi pubblicammo, era una cosa, fummo coperti di insulti, tra l'altro avveniva nel pieno degli anni di Ruby, quindi cioè, effettivamente ce l'eravamo un po' andata a cercare, ma era stato anche divertente. E a proposito di questo, noi eravamo molto combattuti e per un attimo ci dicemmo, vabbè, senti, però se noi volevamo educare qualcuno facevamo i maestri elementari. No, aspetta, non ti sto dicendo che era la posizione giusta, ti sto dicendo cosa ti può venire, no, in certi momenti, e che comunque è una cosa che devi processare, anche perché comunque educare qualcuno è una cosa impegnativa che presuppone una relazione di fiducia super solida e che non è detto che tu da direttore di giornale o da gestore di giornale sei in grado di instaurare in maniera equilibrata, ma il discorso sarebbe lunghissimo, te lo dico in 2 parole. Quanto al resto, qua torniamo al tema cellulare, gli articoli lunghi di approfondimento, qua torniamo a uno dei punti a monte in realtà. Valgono di più 100.000 persone che dal cellulare guardano il gattino che si mette gli occhiali o 1.000 persone che anche dallo smartphone leggono volentieri 6.000 battute molto di approfondimento? Per il modello che ho costruito io, che abbiamo costruito noi, bisogna lavorare perché valgano di più per noi, ovviamente, questi secondi e non la pubblicità tabellare di Google AdSense su quei 100.000. Te la dico così e che Dio ce la mandi buona.
Vado io? Allora, sui commenti sono d'accordo con Jacopo, nel senso che ho un problema a educare i miei figli e non riesco a educare anche i lettori. C'è uno scambio franco di opinioni. Poi secondo me non è vero che tutti i commenti possono, cioè la maggior parte dei commenti sono dei commenti inutili, cioè almeno questa è la mia posizione, cioè arrivano delle cose che non sono, e quindi solamente alcuni devono essere presi per creare poi nuovi contenuti utili al resto dei lettori. E poi c'è un tema di risorse, cioè poi il fatto che ci siano i commenti non ha portato il fatto che ci siano più giornalisti nelle redazioni, e quindi poi prendere in carico anche questa mole di lavoro è impegnativo. Sugli smartphone e la velocità io ho sempre un dubbio, ma chi ci diceva che sui giornali di carta si leggeva di più? Cioè, qual era il metro per... Cioè, siamo sicuri che tutti leggevano tutti gli articoli o leggevano solamente i titoli? Questa cosa qui è un parametro che non abbiamo. La maggior parte dei lettori legge sugli smartphone, ormai siamo a... Adesso non so quali sono i vostri dati, però circa 70-80%, posso sbagliare di qualche punto percentuale, smartphone e restante desk, restante computer. Non è vero che non vengono letti, cioè almeno pure Wired pubblica articoli molto lunghi, i dati che ho è che se è un articolo interessante viene letto, quindi anche perché la gente passa molto tempo in metropolitana o in treno e quindi poi soprattutto se fa ritardo, e quindi poi se li legge, non c'è proprio almeno quello che vedo io, cioè i dati che ho io, una retta correlazione al fatto che siccome lo leggi su smartphone leggi di meno.
Va bene, noi sono d'accordo con quello che hanno detto loro. Ci vorrebbe, per i commenti, ci vorrebbe un panel a parte. Comunque sì, bisognerebbe, magari ve lo proponiamo per l'anno prossimo. Grazie di essere intervenuti.
Buon pranzo.
Buon pranzo e buon proseguimento al festival.